Africa births the entire world, and humankind has been evolving and reinventing itself ever since. Our ancestors were the Earth's first witnesses, the first to walk it, see it, hold its soil in their hands, and tell stories about it.
If the film we watch were anything to go by, few would believe that our history did not begin with slavery, colonialism, or plundered resources. Our own local narratives, dominated by politicians, scandals, and power, do not do much to reflect a truer picture of who we are.
When colonialists extracted and destroyed our artifacts, banned cultural practices, and created a system of servitude and extraction, our sense of self was interrupted. And a continent that doesn't know its history struggles to invent its future. For years, our stories have been told by others, and these stories have become a kind of truth.
We must disrupt this by reflecting our own realities, or sit back and allow ourselves to be shaped by others. Cinema has the power to give citizens a new vision of themselves and what they can be. Cinema is immersive. A film can literally alter one's impression of the world and change one's own idea of their place and role within it. Kwa Kiswahili, ni lazima tuvuruge hali hii kwa kuakisi uhalisi wetu wenyewe, au tuketi na kujiruhusu kuumbwa na wengine. Sinema ina uwezo wa kuwapa raia maono mapya ya wao wenyewe na kile wanaweza kuwa na kukifanya. Picha za mwendo zinatuzamisha ndani ya madunia tofauti tofauti. Zaweza kubadilisha kihalisi mitazamo na hisia za mtu kuhusu ulimwengu na kubadilisha mawazo ya mtu mwenyewe ya mahali, jukumu na mielekeo yake maishani.
Film, therefore, doesn't just reflect culture. It has the power to influence and change it.
We believe that culture is not static. It is constantly evolving.
And through great, diverse, well-made films made by the most talented, committed, and visionary of filmmakers will enable us as Africans on the continent and in the diaspora to finally see ourselves both as we are and as we might become.
We reject the notion that African films must appeal to the basest of African instincts and find the largest audiences, and refute the notion that African cinema has to be quickly or crudely made to be successful. We believe African audiences on the continent and in the diaspora are discerning and demanding as any. Instead, we must commit to telling better and more powerful stories and to tell and it's not complete. I'm sorry, guys. Our powerful stories well. We must tell them truthfully, owning our successes as well as our failures, our darknesses as well as our lights.
In order to impact and uplift ourselves as human beings, we must support films that reflect multiple aspects of ourselves, including those that generate controversy by challenging societal norms.
Our storytellers must be allowed to conceive, gestate, and birth new stories as much as they mirror and recount old ones. We invite honest reflections of all that we are. In this way, we will be challenging old assumptions, unearthing buried truths, and provoking new realities. We are committed to supporting independent storytellers on the African continent who describe the world as they see it, from their own unique histories, experiences, imaginings, and lenses, and celebrate that no two perspectives, no two stories or approaches can ever be identical.
We must resist with all our might the insistence on Africa having a single story, whether that story originates from the Western media or conservative African leadership. We acknowledge the difficulty of the path walked by artists because one does not choose to be an artist, art chooses you. Our community of committed storytellers are vulnerable and need support in order to tell our stories with courage, clarity, and authenticity.
We reject the notion that life for an African filmmaker must be defined only by struggle, and that our most gifted voices should have to live from hand to mouth. We are committed to building a conducive environment able to support a community of celebrated, thriving filmmakers. We exist to nurture, galvanize, and support this diverse community of creators and thinkers in a safe, enabling space where they can create, learn, debate, be inspired, network, and flourish.
Each day we elect to renew our commitment to hunt, gather, and share creative, educational, and financial opportunities for the widest possible diversity of East African filmmakers. We do this not out of duty, but because we too are diverse artists and thinkers, seeking a home within this home we are creating.
Ultimately, we firmly believe that true stories well told can change the world. We support all efforts to build committed audiences and create successful economic models around the exhibition of African films on the continent and in the world. So, let us with haste, hope, and vigor make possible great African films for ourselves, our continent, the world, and those to come.
And that is our African Manifesto. Thank you so much to all the readers, all the filmmakers who took a line from our African Film Manifesto. We mean every word of it. We are all Africans, and it's beautiful to be right here on the equator, just welcoming you all back, and to have actually, I think, the largest gathering of diverse African countries represented in this particular lab, which just concluded yesterday. So this is just really our way of welcoming you, of saying what we regard as our filmmakers' prayer. You know, we pray all these things into the universe. We believe that all these films that we support and birth collectively can indeed change the world. All right, and so on that note, I'm going to welcome up our host to introduce himself.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to day 3 of the DocuBox International Partnership Summit. Yes! How are you guys feeling today? How are you guys feeling? Please turn to the person next to you and tell them good morning. Good morning. Wonderful. My name is Kitavi. I will be your host, taking you through today's activities. And really, friends, we're here today to have a series of conversations. So to get started, we have a dynamic girl duo. If you don't know them, I'm tempted to say shame on you, but I'm gonna redeem myself. But at the core of their sound is a deep commitment to their cultural roots, with Swahili playing a key role in storytelling. Please, ladies and gentlemen, help me bring up on stage none other than We Are Nubia.
Chapishwe hadi kwenye magazeti, wajue ni wewe. Nimependa kijana mtanashati, ongozi na hamaki, ashakubalika huku kwetu kwa wazazi, washajua ni wewe. Nimependa anachonipa sitosheki, najipata narudi na ninamwandalia na mpakuli, kwake sina budi bali kupenda bila budi, nimetosheka bali nimependa nampatia mapenzi ya sinema, niko na uhuru ndani ya gereza, tupendane hadi kwa jeneza. Na mimi nikipenda, nimependa, nampatia mapenzi ya sinema, niko na uhuru ndani ya gereza, tupendane hadi kwa jeneza. Nampatia mapenzi ya sinema, niko na uhuru ndani ya gereza, tupendane hadi kwa jeneza. Na mimi nikipenda, nimependa, nampatia mapenzi ya sinema, niko na uhuru ndani ya gereza, tupendane hadi kwa jeneza. sasa, wa pili ni yeye ananimiliki. Siwezi ngoja firimbi nimwonyeshe jinsi ninavyompenda. Januari to Disemba hadi mwisho wa kalenda. Nionyeshe njia, nijue zako nia, tutaenda hadi nia. Kuna uchuzi anatunipa, sitosheki, najipata narudi. Namwangalia, nampakulia, kwake sina budi, bali kumpenda bila budi. Nimetosheka, bali nimependa, 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 mimi nikipenda, nimependa, nampatia mapenzi ya sinema. Niko na uhuru ndani ya gereza, tupendane hadi kwa jeneza. Na mimi nikipenda, nimependa, nampatia mapenzi ya sinema. Niko na uhuru ndani ya gereza, tupendane hadi kwa jeneza. Niko na uhuru ndani ya gereza, tupendane hadi kwa jeneza. Semayo, kama ni maradhi yapeleke kwa daktari. Niambia niache rumba, na mimi sikuzoea, siwezi kuiacha rumba kwa sababu yako. Waniambia niache rumba, na mimi sikuzoea, siwezi kuiacha rumba kwa sababu yako. yapeleke kwa daktari. cha upelelezi. Hayo usemayo kama ni maradhi yapeleke kwa daktari. Waniambia niache rumba na mimi sikuzoea, siwezi kuiacha rumba kwa sababu waniambia niache rumba na mimi sikuzoea, siwezi kuiacha rumba kwa sababu kijana mwenzio, nashindwa na mali sina, we ningekuoa malaika. Zasumbua roho yangu, pesa zasumbua roho yangu, nami nifanyeje kijana mwenzio, nashindwa na mali sina, we ningekuoa malaika. Kidege kukuwaza kidege, nami nifanyeje kijana mwenzio, nashindwa na mali sina, we ningekuoa malaika. Weka feelings zako kando, tulifanya hivyo jana, hakuna kitu tuliagana. Hizi ni gani umeanza, unanihanda, unanifata. Nilidhania twatibamba, hisia zako zikakupanda. Ole wako kupendana na wewe, hiyo bako weni safo. Ligi yangu haupiki bado, kila mtunda wake. Niko sawa na mtunda wake. Niko sawa yangu, penzi kanitesa, nikaamua nijipende kwanza, nijitilie pamba, kucha kwa mkono na miguu, tia marashi jipeleke pati, hii Februari sina mutu, sipati maua sipati kitu. Pole pole kwako, najipenda na kuweka kando, weni sample, ligi yangu utafika bado, kila mtu na wake. Niko sawa kivyangu, kila mtu na wake. Niko sawa kivyangu, niko sawa, 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 sawa. Thank you.
Guys, you could do better than this. Round of applause for We Are Nubia.
Good morning, everybody. This is Aklilu from Ethiopia, granted for short film documentary, and I'm here for something different. I am really, really touched by the golden voice and the manifesto here. And then I come up with something. This is a fly whisk. Anybody in Swahili, a fly whisk in Swahili language, before the Amharic? Is there anybody who knows in Swahili this thing, the fly whisk? Anybody who can try? Nobody in Swahili. In Ethiopia, we call it chura. It's a fly whisk. But there is no fly here. So what it's going to do here, a docu box is here to avoid any bad ideas about Africa through cinema that represents. So I'm going to present to Doki Box in the name of Shega Africa, a film company based in Addis Ababa, who come up with this short documentary. My director is in middle of us, but this is a producing thing. He doesn't want to be here. So this is from Ethiopia to the whole Africa, from Shega Africa to Doki Box, to this very charismatic representative.
On behalf of DocuBox, I must say thank you very much. All those ideas have been dispersed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Wonderful. Are you guys ready to get started to the first fireside chat? And the theme for the first fireside chat is the future of African storytelling. And this session will explore what the future of African storytelling could look like and what it will take to build a vision with with vision, autonomy, and depth. And our moderator is our very own, the founder, who is a filmmaker and a founder of DocuBox, East Africa's first independent film fund, instrumental in supporting and empowering local filmmakers. Please put your hands together. Help me invite Judy Kibinge.
Hi, really excited to start with our first panel. I think what we're going to do is just invite each panelist up one by one. I'll just say a quick word about them. We put together 3 incredible people to kind of unpack for us or begin to unpack for us the future of storytelling, not just African storytelling, but of storytelling. And the first person I'm going to ask to come up is Kara Mertes. So through her career, as a nonprofit executive, award-winning executive producer. She's a director, she's a curator, lots of different things, and she's really been a big cheerleader and supporter of DocuBox for many years as well. And right now, you serve as the founding director of IRIS. All right. Yeah. So, Kara, and I think we'll do this as each person comes up, just tell us a little bit about IRIS, just a sentence or two.
Great. Well,
Okay.
first of all, I'm thrilled to be here. Judy, thank you. And everybody at DocuBox is an amazing, amazing team. And I'm really proud to be called a friend of DocuBox all these years. So I've been in the independent media field for quite some time in different positions. And the latest thing that I'm doing, the latest position I have, is as founder of something called IRIS, which is the International Resource for Impact and Storytelling, which is really the through line of what I've been doing. What is the difference that our stories can make is the question I just keep asking and finding different answers to. It's a donor collaborative, and we're working with 9 donors now on bringing narrative strategies and storytelling for community impact further into civil society, particularly organizers, movements, those that are fighting for civil rights, human rights, individual rights, and we work in various places around the world, and East Africa is one of the main places. We now have 2 partnerships, soon to be 3 partnerships with DocuBox.
All right. Yeah, and I can't think of anyone better to kind of rethink this way of telling stories. You know, you've been at Sundance, for 8 years. You were at Just Film. So I really am looking forward to getting into this conversation with you. And the next person I'm going to invite up here, I'm so ashamed that I just met him today. I mean, this is someone that I speak about all the time because I think he's really transforming the landscape of film, and he's taking our way, of making things. He's sort of looking at Hollywood and saying, that's not us, we're going to reinvent things. And that is Philip Karanja, better known as Phil Director. Please come on up. So Phil, you're really one of Kenya's most respected creative minds, and it's really good to have you up here. Okay. Is it true that the name of your organization, Feel It, is also, it's a play on your name and also on feeling it?
It's both actually. Yeah. I think any piece of content that you do, you need to feel it. You need to. Yeah, and then my name is Phil, so Yeah.
Storytelling, like in every part of that. So actually, there's so many things that we can say about you. We know you so well in Kenya because your face from Tahiti High, you've gotten such a huge following, and then it's like you've taken that following and done something incredible with it, which we'll learn more about. But maybe just in your own words, just introduce yourself to everybody.
Right. My name is Philip Karanja, and I have been producing culture-changing content for about 2 decades now. This is through TV shows, films, online content now. And we've done this crazy thing of rethinking how we film, running away from the Hollywood model, and also rethinking how we sell. And we've done that by creating our own community. And so we sell our films directly to Kenyans and Africans. So yeah, in a nutshell, I think that's the one way we've engineered how to think about film and business in the context of Africa.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you're here, because if you knew the number of panels you've saved my life in, because people say, what's happening in Kenya? And then I just talk about Feel It. I even show your work.
Wow.
And here we are finally meeting. So really glad you joined us.
I have been a fan of your work since I was a film student, and this is the first time we're meeting. Shame on me.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Shame on us, yeah? Our next guest, a good friend, Brian Afande. You were a DJ, and then you turned to a brand manager. Brian, I find your storytelling and just you have this joyful energy, and of course your origin story of Black Rhino is really dramatic. I hear you were in Westgate when the terrorist attack happened. Yeah? And somehow this you were brand manager with Converse, and the drama of you tell us what happened and what is Black Rhino and what's that moment that turned life around for you?
Thank you so much, and good morning, guys. Just for the record, Judy, that manifesto really spoke a lot, and you can clearly say it wasn't ChatGPT. Someone really actually worked and got it out, so it spoke to my heart. So well done, and for all the artists who made it possible. So I'll take this opportunity to use this as a therapy session for me, only because Westgate was different. I think after I survived Westgate, this was for me the first time in my life I actually interrogated myself. And Black Rhino is actually born of Westgate. Coincidentally, Westgate was in 2013, September 21st. When we registered Black Rhino was in 2015, and when the certificate came out was September 21st. So I don't subscribe to coincidence, and this is really divine engineering. And it's interesting to see that the ecosystem has really grown from us working in a silo to the silos opening up and dissolving to creating immersive medium and content around the continent, and also partnered with Kenyans to build that. I mean, I saw Matrid here. Where's Matrid at? I worked on a very cool project with Matrid where we trained about 16 women in immersive media. So, yeah.
But wait. First, what is Black Rhino?
Oh, cool. Sorry. I'm sorry, guys.
That's okay.
Black Rhino transitioned from a studio, a 360 studio, into what you call an extended reality innovation hub. So what we do is, our business model is quite unique. 70% is highly commercial, where we do commercial projects for different clients and brands. It's not really the funnest work to do, but it gets the bills done. And then the other 30% is what we call ecosystem building. We do a lot of training, a lot of workshops, boot camps, hackathons. So what's so interesting about Black Rhino is we have this space. It's at the mall on the basement floor. We call it the basement, but this space is what you call a social spatial space that allows young people to come and access the technology. There are certain barriers to entry of the technology, from technical barriers to psychological barriers. So this space, people can come and access technology at no cost, or the people who can be able to afford it at a relatively cost. I'm having a very hard time with my leadership team because I'm trying to transition the company towards something that I feel would be ideal, creating this social spatial space where weird guys, creatives, technologies, all these, dissolving these silos. But currently, I feel like any one of you who wants to come into the space and play around with the technology and experiment is really an R&D space between creativity and technology.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. And we visited it the other day, and it's actually a really, really amazing space.
Thank you.
Especially because of all the serendipitous
yes.
curation that has happened in there. But I'm going to just jump in. Sometimes we start to talk about the future, but I think, and Kara, I know I promised that I wasn't going to ground you in the past, but your experience is so vast. We just need a snapshot of when we talk about the future, just maybe you could give us a snapshot of the way the world has worked, and then we can jump into right now and how future forward your work is, and Philip's work is, and Brian's work is as well.
That's great. Thank you. You read my mind. I was thinking, as we're talking about the future of storytelling, you can't just talk about the future. You also have to talk about the present, and you talk about the past as well. And there's a great Ursula Le Guin quote that says that story is the only boat we have to navigate the rivers of time. And that is the sort of ancient piece of the future of storytelling, is that it is what we do when we are the most human. Storytelling is the thing that binds us together, and that's ancient. I would say in the present, what we're looking at is actually the future of storytelling, and it's on this panel. It's the ways in which we're all inverting the way we used to work, right? So rethinking the finance model, being entrepreneurial, radical collaborations, reimagining where funding and support can come from. I think we've all had that kind of breakthrough aha moment. I know that when I was at Ford Foundation, after 20 years of advocating for independent film and independent filmmakers, and this is a little of the history, setting up film funds, trying to build the ecosystem, I realized that there was this ceiling that you always hit. People would sort of pat you on the head and say, documentary's good, but this is as far as you can go because ultimately it's still, an artist in general, culture in general, is still considered peripheral to power. And so when I was at Ford Foundation and I was the only creative filmmaker in so many of the rooms, unlike Sundance, this is why I hit tripwires. First of all, it's very corporate, even though it's a philanthropy. And secondly, it is not filled with people who are versed in culture. It's not filled with people that understand storytelling. All of us here, and certainly in this room, everybody's trying to grapple with that question of how did we used to try and lift up the issues and tell the stories? Feature-length documentary, I feel like that's a legacy answer that is necessary, but not sufficient for an information and technology-driven age. And I'll say the final thing that I think about a lot with the future is, and this is gonna sound crazy, but how do we remain human? With the coming of AI, which is just a baby now, AI, large language models, ChatGPT, it's just beginning. We have no idea where it's gonna go, and I'm not a fear monger. I actually think we need to adopt and address and evolve it in a way that serves the best of being human, storytelling interests, but we're at a cusp now where the question of technology in this new era we're in, and surveillance capitalism, all of those things, how do we harness it for our goals of community, collectivity, collaboration? So that's my past, present, and future.
That's a really, really brilliant framing, isn't it? Yeah. And I think it helps us launch off into our conversation, because it's a couple of things I picked up from what you said, especially that sentence jumps out about, a lot of people still thinking that culture is peripheral to power. And I think here in Kenya just last year, we saw that when we were having the protest about a year ago, we saw so much just turned into story on TikTok, on Instagram. We saw a lot of energy and power derived from that in a way we've never seen before. And I think no one's work defines how much people are drawn together by story, even in entertainment, than yours, Phil. Because at a time when we're all, looking at screens and looking at Instagram and watching Netflix and so on, you've managed to create this model that draws not hundreds of people at a time like this, but thousands of people into a single room. I saw Grand Little live maybe 2 or 3 times. It was so funny. And then I thought, that's it. They'll just keep doing that. And then you did something else, and maybe you could just share where you're at now, and something about that.
Thank you. So I strongly believe, and it's what she's talked about as well, with everyone being on their phone and the internet and now AI, we're still human at the end of the day. I think one of the places where we need to start investing more is in human events and experiences. And that's what we figured out, and we were able to bring so many people to watch our films. So the way our model works is in 2015, around 2015, human beings' first screen to interact with became a phone. You wake up, the first thing you look at is your phone. You're watching TV, but you're on your phone. You're driving, you're on your phone. You're not supposed to be doing that. And so figured that if your business is not on a phone, then you're losing out on a lot. And so around 2018, we started toying with the idea of how can we sell our products directly on the phone. So that means creating a website or another Netflix. And we learned that for you to sell any product, you have to create the community first. So before we started making the films, we started narrating, my co-founder started narrating stories on YouTube. And so we started building this community, and it was very intentional. He narrates stories that run for about an hour long. So that means the audience that is watching can watch a long format show. Films are long format. And then we ask the audience to vote for which story they'd want us to convert into a film. So that means for me as a CEO, I have ready clients before I even start producing. and the burden is on them. You guys told us to make this film, so you guys have to come and watch. Yeah, and so, yeah, exactly. But the entire journey, what it has taught me is, as filmmakers, I know for the longest time we've been running on passion, and this is passion, this is business. They are two very different things, and we need to learn to speak the language of business. And so that's the journey I've been on. So how do I fund the films? And traditionally, as a filmmaker, I'd go to funders, film funds, and they have all these terms, T&Rs, terms, TNCs, yes, sorry, yes. And most of the time, if someone is buying the lunch, you kind of have to tell their story. So we didn't like that model, and we found a way to get everyday Kenyans to invest in the films that we were doing, and we make their money back in 8 months. So that means I have to produce, shoot, and get my film out in 6 months. Again, so breaking the whole model from Hollywood to doing it our way. And then now, of course, the marketing was there as well. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what we've done. I hope I answered your question.
You've absolutely answered the question.
Yeah.
I think what I find so interesting about you and Abel and the model is just how you were able to just capitalize, with him as well, well known as an actor, beginning these hour-long stories. Just maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you moved that into physical audiences.
Humans are craving for in-person events. That's a fact. I think we're always on our screens, and everything right now is so digital. And trust me, Zoom meetings are very convenient, but we miss going for those conferences and eating those sweets and free tea. And there's something you can't erase. And so, yeah, as Abel started narrating the stories, there was a huge push. Like, we don't want to watch these stories on our phones. We want to actually watch them live. Could you narrate these stories live? And so we started way back in 2021 or 2022. I think the first live recording of us narrating the stories, we got about 300 people. I think, yeah, we moved to 500 and 800, and consistently in a span of 2 years until now, we get 6,000 people coming in. And so, because the goal was always to make films, yeah, so we combined the two. We're like, you know what, we'll come, we'll narrate the stories, and then after that, we'll watch the film. Yeah, and what, again, that has gotten me to thinking is maybe our cinema theaters need to come up with fresh ways of pulling crowds, because 6,000 people came to watch a film. We asked in the room how many people actually go to watch films in the movie theater. I mean, just a bunch of hands. In fact, we did a screening of our second film, Click Click Bang, in Eldoret. We got 1,000 people coming in to watch the film.
Paying, right?
Yes, paying. And we were charging 1,000 shillings. Most cinema theaters charge 400 shillings. So like our ticket prices are like the most expensive ticket prices. And we got 1,000 people in, and we asked them how many people, because where we were screening the film, there's a cinema, like a walking distance, just over there, there's a cinema theater. And we asked them, how many of you have actually gone to that cinema theater to watch a film? I kid you not, out of 1,000 people, less than 10 hands went up. And so we realized it's a culture thing. Kenyans just don't go to watch cinema. It's not even money. Money is not the problem. It's just we don't have that culture. And number two, maybe our cinema theater experience is not as fun. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
So interesting. Whoa. So, Brian. Yes. We were at your amazing offices the other day with Kara. And it's really, there we are, we're talking about this very human experience. You're doing a lot of interesting things with augmented reality, but that don't restrict you just to the phone. It seems to be like you're looking for some kind of interaction between consumers. And tell us more about what we saw.
So what you guys saw in the space is Okay, first I want to scare everybody here, but I want you not to be super scared because the idea is we are really transitioning into a space where we call it the phygital era, where you're able to access both the physical and digital elements in life into one unified seamless phygital. Yeah, into one unified seamless experience. So the internet, as you know, the trajectory of revolutions, technological revolutions from agrarian to the Iron Age. So as you look at that revolution, electronics gave birth to the internet. And now the internet has actually given birth to something, which is called the spatial computing era. For this case, spatial just means phygital, the access of physical and digital. Now, as the world becomes smaller because of democratization of information, so is also attention spans. They're growing shorter and shorter. So what you guys saw was a classic example on how you can be able to embed narrative on space or on a piece of paper where you add a digital layer on top of it. So what the technology does, it allows you to be able to democratize access to it. You would attest to this as Africans and also people who are not African, that the mobile phone in Africa has actually led to not just economic progress, but also a lot of social progress. And this technology allows young people to be able to reach diverse audiences, but at the same time also get analytical data. I mean, for us, we have sort of a conflict of a duality between engineering and storytelling, right? So on this one side, we're engineers trying to build solutions around it, but in this other side, we're storytellers trying to leverage the technology to tell stories to different audiences, because consumption habits have changed. There's animation, there's you should talk about film. A lot of Kenyans also, unless we grew up reading comic books, right? But now animation is such a cool format that you can be able to get the animation from a 16:9 aspect ratio into your living room. And these are in the young people, the Gen Zs and the young people, they want to consume content in different formats. So what we decided to build was a solution that allows young people to build this technology without the need for code. Because code is a barrier to entry. So we say there's a psychological barrier to entry because people fear the technology. Technology anxiety is real, by the way. And I wouldn't even say it's an African thing. It's a global thing. A lot of people fear the technology. So how do you create a solution where the technology, when you deploy the technology, it's in a friendly space, it's fun, but it's being consumed by diverse audiences leveraging on the mobile phone? I really feel like the mobile phone, like what Phil is saying, we should capitalize a lot on the mobile phone, because a lot of young people and not all people are consuming content. So this is a perfect example of how you can create an extension of narrative into your space, and this is what we call decolonizing space.
Maybe you could give us because that's really fascinating, just one example that we can see, something that perhaps you've been working on that I know we saw some work that you were able to actually commercialize your art in a sense. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and also may I please also add a non-commercial example, which is one of my all-time favorites. So when Safaricom was launching this campaign called S-Hook, I don't know, I see that maybe there's some target audiences here for S-Hook. When Safaricom was launching S-Hook, their biggest challenge is they were launching it to a younger audience, but they didn't want, so we say that the future of phygital is based on unifying what you call below the line and above the line unified. So above the line, you have your billboards and digital, etc. Below the line, you have your experiential work, right? So their challenge was, how do we seamlessly integrate experiential and above the line into a unified experience? So we created this experience that young people would come and scan out-of-home advertising, like billboards, magazines, and books, and there would be this information. It was a video popping out that the young people could engage in with the video. And then we had embedded an analytical functionality that they would click, go into this platform and get more information about registering on this particular platform. So when we built it, we didn't think much of it, and Safaricom's agency went and applied for the Marketing Society of Kenya Award ceremony, and they applied for this particular category. And it was funny that this category actually won the best use of emerging technology in a digital campaign. For the first time in 25 years since Safaricom was here, won such an award. But this was validation to us that the audience is ready for such an experience, but also the analytical data that Safaricom got in the back end allows them to measure their return of investment. So this is the commercial side of it. These organizations want to pay, but they also want to measure the return of investment and conversion. So the back end allows them to see that. Non-commercially, there's a project that we've done with Power 254, and it's around the Maandamano and the demonstrations that are happening right now. So these artists created an amazing animated piece, and they had to put out, it was a digital exhibition where you would scan the piece, which was static. I think in your manifesto you talk about life, I think it said life is not static or something like that. Culture is not static. I believe education is not static as well. So these guys built this experience, and they wanted people to understand it from a 16:9 aspect ratio. Is there any more information that I can embed behind this piece of paper? So people would be able to scan this particular piece of paper and get the full experience, because we say that these pieces of paper can be an infinite canvas of information. So how do you embed infinite canvas on information on a already decolonized piece of paper? There's so much you can only put on the paper. But if you create a digital experience within or under the paper that can give you more information. So this was a really cool experience.
Whoa. Can I just build on the question of genre for a second? Just based on what you're talking about. So I'm a big believer in experimenting across all forms of storytelling and immersive storytelling and VR, and there are people in this room that know a lot about it, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that storytelling works in the brain on the sort of screen is much more like receiving information. But the way immersive storytelling works, when you feel like you're in it, this sort of volumetric storytelling that we're headed toward, works more like memory. It's deeper, it's more emotional, it's longer lasting. So think about that as you're thinking about the ways that you tell your story. And I talked to people, I worked in documentary for a very long time, and documentary is very information heavy and really trying to convince you through logic, right? So it's in that information space, but experimental documentary and fiction and more experimental types of filmmaking and also immersive filmmaking starts to tug on the deeper memory, emotion, sort of somatic world that affects you, and that has a deeper behavioral effect over the long term. So I just want to say that that's part of the future of storytelling, is to think about those effects as well.
Actually, may I please add on what you said, Kara? Guys, it's very important to realize that there's experiences and there's narratives that you can be able to watch in a flat screen, right? VR gives you the ability to have agency in a narrative. You can be able to walk through a narrative. There's formats that would be cool on linear flat platforms, and there's formats that are cool when you have agency of narrative. Another thing what you say, and just to emphasize on that, is the sense of immersion and the ability for the technology to trick your mind that you're there. Behavioral science, these experiences allow you to get in touch with the emotional currency of the piece. It allows you to really be embedded into the narrative. And for once, technology allows the audience to choose their role. Usually when you're watching a film, you don't choose your role. You're pretty much maybe, unless it's very experimental, you're pretty much consuming the content, right? VR allows you to play a role of the third person point of view. You can break the fourth wall in virtual reality, where the conversation, the people can be talking to you and you could interact with the people. So I just feel like there's a lot of opportunities, and I've been in this space for 10 years now, but in the whole tech space for about, creative space for about 2 decades. But I've come to realize from back in the day when I was DJing to now producing immersive experiences, that there are formats that can really work on VR, and the audiences are ready for these formats because they find these other formats, they could consume it, but it's also very mundane. So how do you also create an experience that is not mundane, but can add other dimensions to narrative?
You know, whoa, it's like, whoa, okay, we're in the future. It's
Well,
true,
something
it's
that
true.
we never talk about in the documentary space is gaming.
Yeah.
Right? And that's storytelling for a Gen Z generation as well, particularly young men. You're in a world, you have agency, there are stories, they're very paltry stories, but it is a world of experience. And that, I feel like gaming is gonna catch up with narrative creation pretty quickly. So anyway, not to push it, but.
Yeah, but I think what's also interesting and really gives us in this room pause for thought is we're talking about these very futuristic things when, you know, how many, you know, we have so many filmmakers here and we've screened our films, and often we'll look around that cinema or that audience and actually just see our peers in there, right? And, you know, in the one sense, we're talking about all these things happening and the pace that the world is moving at. But there's a certain sort of quantity of films that we haven't actually even quite gotten to locally. And I'm really curious to dive deeper into your work, Kara, because together with Merit, we partnered and did Kenya Creates. And there's something that I found so fresh about that model, because it felt like a return to authentic storytelling, tradition in the sense that, no, it's not VR, and but the audiences were completely different because of the collaborations that you'd get. Please tell us something about those models, because every time we've shown those films, be it to community or schools, there's such deep reactions. Those stories really, that slate of films really connects with people. So maybe you could tell us something about the model.
I will, and I'll be brief. But does anybody here have you heard of Bella is Dying maybe next week? Float, Home, Know Your Body. So we did comedy, we did short fiction, more TV entertainment, like On Purpose. And Meret Mendefro is here, an amazing Ethiopian-American producer, director, mentor, entrepreneur, etc. And what you describe in terms of authentic storytelling, and even the way I opened talking about the past, present, and future it was put into this project by design by Meret, who led the writer's room, and the choices of the artists. And we came in and said, we want to do, it's part of the future of storytelling, I think, because it's alternative distribution. We had a donor that was very interested in reaching young audiences around adolescent health, right? I don't want to use the word SRHR, but I will, sexual and reproductive health and rights and justice, in that space. And so we set about to say, how can we do this differently, attract younger audiences, work with Kenyan artists, and start from a space, and this is what Meret did so beautifully. We took all this narrative research that we had done, cultural power mapping, obstacles to progressive policy in Kenya, it was all Kenya specific, and said, you know, out of this, we want to reach young people, and we want to reach also their parents, and we want to work with artists, most of whom had not made film. We chose them because of their writing skills, because of their following, because we thought that they had promise or they had expressed promise. And we knew that there were some television writers that would be really great as potentially as directors. And Meret ran a room that really took all of that research, worked with the artists, created literally a peer group among the artists. So they're talking to each other and sharing with each other and coming up with ideas, and really said to them, okay, now how can you express this in your own experience? And it's that anchoring in their own experience, as opposed to saying, here's all this information about adolescent pregnancy, you know, young teen mothers, et cetera. Give us a documentary about all of this information. Meret said, tell us how you have lived this, and then develop a project around that. And that's, I think, the kind of special sauce for why it resonates. And we have been showing it recently. DocuBox has done an amazing job showing this around Kenya, and in schools and communities. And I was at one of those screenings in Mombasa 2 weeks ago, and the response around me, it was like standing room only, 50, 60 people, mostly not parents, I will say, though some parents. And the response was, this is Kenyan. I can see myself in these characters. You know, whether it's the daughter or the parents or the kid, the friends, or the father. So it really resonated at that authentic level that we're all talking about and really trying to get at. So I feel like it's a formula that DocuBox, you know, and Iris have worked out. We want to do more of these and build a kind of pipeline of authentic storytelling in Kenya for these issues. And then there's a whole distribution network that is not a commercial. It's like forming your own community. And this is like the people that really care about adolescent health will be using these films now. So there's DocuBox has already set up an educational partnership. Where are you?
Makandi?
Yes, yes. Cindy. So there's education partnership, there's community partnerships, and we're feeding it into our new project with the Hilton Foundation around young mothers. It's going into all those networks already. So
I really love
yay DocuBox.
I really love that because
yay Moret.
you know, when you watch that slate of films, every film is as unique as the author of that, you know, those films. Ty's film, he's a comedian. It's just hysterically funny. You know, it never crosses your mind that this has been supported or funded. And I think there's something beautiful about being able to unlock funds to make films where each person is satisfied. You know, the creative is able to tell their story artistically and authentically, and it also meets a need that an organization had. At this point, you guys, man, this time is not enough. He waved 5 minutes at me. Do I have time to ask if there are any questions in the room? Like one? Okay, all right. Oh, cool, cool. So 3 very different models, each very deep, each so unique. What are the questions? I'm sure that there are many.
Guys, could you first give them a round of applause? I mean, what a conversation. And let me just do what Philip did when he was doing the show. How many before this session knew the word phygital era exists? So now we are glad that we came because, you know, we have something. So let me just say, go forth and abuse, misuse, overuse that word in your small talks moving forward. So we'll take a couple of questions. This is what we'll do. We'll do it in about 2 or 3 phases. So one phase will take about 3 questions, and then the panel will be able to answer. And then we take another phase of the same. All right? So if you're ready, you can shoot your hand up. Okay.
Wow, that was awesome. Thank you so much for opening our minds. My question is for Philip. It's so inspiring what you've done to create a movement of people locally, not just watching the films, but taking them further, like participating, investing, all of that whole movement. You've started a movement, and the analogies that you gave about the cinemas versus the people who came to your screenings is just so eye-opening. I'm from Tanzania, and that would be amazing to do in our country as well, to start a movement and to really awaken this culture. As you're saying, it's not part of the culture to go to a cinema. Can you walk us through, like, maybe a step by step? How did you start that to start creating that seed and watering that seed to become a plant?
Okay. So then the need was born, this is around 2017, 2018. We looked at our business model as a company. We realized that we depended heavily on broadcasters and corporates to run the company. And we started, you know, having conversations around what if tomorrow the broadcaster wakes up and they don't like us? You know, that means we close shop. So we need to diversify our client base. And so we started toying with the idea of how about if we were able to sell our content directly to Kenyans as opposed to queuing in line to pitch to Netflix, for example. So that's where the need was born. And so when we started having those conversations is when we learned that for you to sell any product, you need to create a community. And so how do you create a community? Use the tools that are available. Social media is everything right now. If I want to reach a large number of people, then social media is where it is. So we intentionally now started creating content for social media. So there's Abel Mutua and myself. We're the co-founders of Philip Productions Limited. So he's a better storyteller than I am. So he started narrating stories to capture the mass market. And then I started a YouTube podcast called Becoming CEO, where I interview CEOs. But the idea is, you know, I get to have a one-on-one with the CEO, and after the interview, I can tell them to invest in my film. So, yeah. So one of us handled the business, the other one handled the community. Yeah, and then now, of course, we had to build a website where we could sell our films directly. And it was something new in the market where we are telling people, go to this website, purchase a watch link. A link will be sent to your phone, or to your email, and on whatever device you open it on, it can't be watched on another device. So yeah, Netflix is still struggling with people sharing passwords. We don't struggle with that. Yeah. So that also introduced me to a whole new world of tech, which is another headache. So we have the platform, we have the community. So the next thing is produce a film. Because we were not sure we will be able to break even and make profit, the first thing was, how do we undo everything we've learned from Hollywood on how to shoot a film? Because in Kenya, everything we've learned as filmmakers is we've learned it from Hollywood. Believe it or not, Kenyan crew members sometimes charge the same rates as Hollywood members. It is expensive to produce in Kenya. And that's because we learned from Hollywood. So we had to rethink the entire model. How do we shoot? How do I shoot? So the first film that Judy mentioned, we shot it in 8 days. And it was very intentional. We have to shoot it in very few days, so that we spent around $40,000. And when we premiered, we were able to, and sell the film on our platform, we were able to make that money back in 2 weeks. Yeah, so we were like, okay, so there's proof of concept. This works. So now the next thing was, how do we fund the model moving forward? And so we actually reached out back to our community. We were like, guys, we made a film. You guys came and watched, and you bought the film, and we made money. Do you guys think you can invest in the film? Because prior to that, for you to get someone to invest in the film, it's a whole long process. For the second film, believe it or not, we actually got more money than we needed to produce the film. We actually turned money away. And that's when I realized we also need to rethink how we fund our films. There are a lot of Kenyans and Africans with money sitting in their account. They just need to know, if I put my money here, I'll make it back in X number of months with this percentage in interest. And so right now, in terms of producing our films, we don't struggle with getting investors. And that's because we know we have a concept, we have a model that will make them their money back in 8 months. So we need to produce, get the movie out in 6 months so that we pay them back. We give ourselves 2 months to make the money back and pay them. Yeah, I think that's pretty much a step-by-step in terms of getting the community, how to do the stories, how to produce, how to get investors, and how to market. Yeah, thank you.
Whoa, that's like a crash course in how to do it, right? Amazing. Really, really amazing. Do we have another question?
Hi, I'm Melissa. My question, I think, is to all, either and or all of you. It's about audio. So I work in podcasts and radio, and the focus on like researching and trying to understand how the culture around audio is evolving. And what I find so fascinating is that while we are all like, everyone's going digital, and people aren't into audio only these days, where you have to be visual, is what I hear a lot of podcasters saying. But at the same time, like at the Communications Authority, there's a very long wait list of people waiting for radio licenses. And we are actually switching over to digital broadcasting because the current spectrum is jammed, it's saturated. So which means clearly radio is growing, but it's fallen from top of mind. So my question to you all is, what's been your experience and what's your view on audio storytelling and how that's evolving in the spaces that you're working in?
Audio storytelling is, in fact, if you ask me right now, the new TV is podcasts. I think, if I'm not wrong, Netflix will start airing podcasts. So audio storytelling is more alive than ever before. Another statistic, Kenyans, the most streamed platform in Kenya for radio is Spotify. Spotify is doing more numbers than Citizen Radio. And so audio storytelling is more alive than ever before. And the beauty about it is people are craving for unique experiences. So now you can even go a step further. You can have the audio storytelling on whatever platform, but you can start having live storytelling, audio storytelling with audiences and a community. And that's the beautiful part. That's where you make the money. The minute you have a community, you can tell them to buy this chair, they will buy it. You'll make your money back. Yeah.
That's interesting, speaking about communities. I don't know how many guys have gone to Karura Forest for the audio experience with Mutana. Yeah, beautiful experience. Now he's integrated augmented reality where you can go through his the whole of Karura. You have an audio device. There's QR codes. I think you can be able to scan and get different bits of the narrative. It's around the Mau Mau. Beautiful experience. Also, just wanted to answer your question and say, one of the challenges we have with audio is a lot of us believe in linear audio production. And there's so many ways you can build audio. There's binaural audio, there's spatialized audio, building soundscapes around audio. And I feel like probably culturally we're used to having the combination of audio and visual into one unified seamless experience. We need to unlearn some things and explore and experiment with other mediums within audio. So for instance, I can remember I spoke to a very cool dude, an audio expert at the back, and we were just trading notes on what sort of devices does he use for audio, what sort of devices do we use in 360. And it's very clear that even the learning curve changing from audio to 360 audio is not as high as you would think. The learning curve is not steep, but a lot of us want to produce audio because we are comfortable around it. My suggestion is go Google this stuff. I mean, just go Google 360 audio. What does it do to narrative? You can also embed, there's a type of audio, the first time you hear it, it's not your ears that hear it, it's your brain that hears it first, and not your ears. And it does something different to your neurological sort of pathways. And it's very important for you to realize this stuff. We didn't go to school to learn XR. I always joke around this and say I graduated from the prestigious School of YouTube Premium minus the ads. Because the thing was, I sat down 10 years ago with my business partner and we just said, what is this virtual reality? I remember trying to convince my wife to invest into the business and she said, okay, babe, what is VR? And I had to explain to her about a concept that was very foreign and I didn't know about it, but based on the stuff that I was reading until we shipped in what we call a DK1. A lot of people would say, no, you didn't start with a DK1. I started with a developer's kit 1 before Oculus. This was immediately Oculus was bought off by Meta, then Facebook. So you can teach yourself this stuff. Just explore audio. Come to the space. I'm always an advocate for our space. Come to the space. There's audio devices there you can play around with. And there's a community that exists that can be able to also help you explore.
Yeah, I love that question. I listen to podcasts every morning, and it reminds me actually when, just to also jump into the conversation, I was in advertising a long time ago, in the 90s, early 90s, and even then, radio was the thing. 98% of the population listened to radio, but it wasn't sexy enough for the advertisers. Everybody, again, was following a certain model, assuming that advertising meant you needed to have a billboard and a TV commercial. And what I'm liking about this conversation we're having, it's about those assumptions, you know, that the fact that we do things over and over again. We try and make films like Hollywood. We try and do commercials like, you know, the way they happen in the West. And I'm really excited to hear that audio storytelling is all the way up there. It is for me.
Hi everyone, my name is John, I'm a filmmaker, and I think recently all the filmmaking spaces have been in, one of the biggest things I've been hearing is authenticity all the time. And recently I was in a space also where a really hit Kenya series was speaking, and the director was speaking. I really don't want to name names because I really didn't like what he said. So my question in line with that is going to Phil. He said, as an audience member, he was being asked a thing on every single Kenyan TV show or every single Kenyan film coming out is looking the same. There's this stereo guy, his undergrounds with the militia or like stuff like that. So it was being asked on that. And as an audience member, I felt that I'm being spoon-fed. I'm being told, oh, this is what you want, this is what you need, eat it. You get. So as a filmmaker, how are you able to balance what your audience needs and also what you speak to in your values, in your business model holistically as a filmmaker? Because sometimes it's not, you might have that maybe conflict because you want to tell this type of stories. The market looks like this. How are you able to structure those two? Because I really don't want to have my films on Vimeo only. I want people to see them. So how are you able to strike that balance?
So one of the things when you coming up with your business model for your production company, one of the biggest things is understanding your target audience. And then once you understand your target audience, then you know what type of films that they love. One thing we love about our model is when someone comes up to me and says, we are doing the same narrative, the same ghetto story, we actually tell them, I think right now there are over 500 stories on Abel's channel. And whenever we ask people to vote for which story they love the most, guess which ones come number one? The ghetto stories. So, because my business model is a mass market business model, then you'll find that I'll do a lot of stories that have a lot of social commentary and stories that touch on people from the ghetto. Also because I come from there, so I kind of understand the stories more. This is the thing we do at Feel It. We've understood that there are films that you need to sell and make money, and then there are films that you need to do and only 10 people will watch and they will win awards. And so we do projects that we are passionate about, that we absolutely are doing them for us. And then when we are doing stories that we need to sell and make money from, now we have to listen to the people. That's how we've been able to split the two. Yeah. Because you cannot sell something that people don't want. Yeah. For you to make money, you need to sell what people need. Sometimes they don't know what you need, so you have to go to the market and interrogate and figure out what they need, but you have to sell what they need. Yeah.
All right, I can see you standing up and walking our way, and that can only mean one thing, that it's the end of this wonderful conversation up here, but it can and will continue out there. Thank you so, so much. Thank you.
We can do a better job. Let's appreciate them as they have their seats. All right, then. Are we ready to go to the second fireside chat? Our conversation on our second fireside chat is distribution models in the film sector. And this session explores a couple of things. One, the rise of grassroots, tech-enabled and hybrid distribution models. How African filmmakers and exhibitors are curating audiences, not just content. The economies, risks, and reward of going beyond conventional systems. Ooh. And finally, what a sustainable, inclusive, African-owned distribution ecosystem might look like. I kind of feel like Phil has partially answered that. So I'm going to invite the panelists. Please show them some love as they come in. Our first panelist coming up is Cindy Makandi, who is the founder of Tunga Africa. Let's appreciate her. Cindy right here is the founder and CEO of Tunga Africa, where she works to grow appreciation and market access for African cinema on the continent. And with over a decade of experience in film production and distribution, she's passionate about building film culture among young audiences through education and holds an MA in international film business. Hi, Cindy.
Hello.
You want to say hi to everyone?
Hello, everyone.
Wonderful. Our next panelist is Naomi O'Callaghan, who is the co-founder and creative director of Unseen Nairobi. She is Kenya's first art house cinema and now a staple in Nairobi's thriving cultural scene. Naomi's career highlights are seeing diverse audiences come together to watch independent films from the region, as well as collaborating with the film industry on creative events. Welcome, Naomi. You want to say hi to everyone? Wonderful. Our third panelist is Wambui Gave. Wambui, if you're here. Wambui is a screenings and impact lead at DocuBox, where she's a Kenyan director, producer, and film curator, and currently serves as screening manager right here at DocuBox. She curates documentaries and short film programming for audiences in Nairobi and beyond. An award-winning filmmaker and alumni of multiple international labs, she is passionate about visual storytelling and its power to spark dialogue and connection. Welcome, Wambui. And our final and last panelist for this fireside chat is Sam Soko, who is a filmmaker and co-producer of LBX Studio, We can do better. Let's appreciate Sam as he comes up on stage. LBX is known for producing powerful socio-political documentaries, including Softy, No Simple Way Home, and Free Money. And his work explores themes of identity, justice, and governance with a focus of East African stories that resonate globally. Karibu sana Sam. Asante. And our moderator for this session is Mitzi Goldman, who is the CEO of Documentary Australia. Mitzi Goldman is a pioneering non-profit connecting philanthropy and documentary to drive social change, a filmmaker with over 35 years of experience. Please help me appreciate one more time our host for this session.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to be here. It's a real honor to be here at this panel and to meet you all, and we've already had some very interesting conversations. Look, there are so many things to talk about, and there are so many challenges, so I know that we've got a time restraint, so I'm going to power through it. I think I'm going to start with you, Wambui. I'd love to know a little bit more about what you're doing here at DocuBox to build audiences, to nourish those audiences, and to bring audiences to the films that you're supporting.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. So I'll give you just a brief background of how we started our screenings. We started in this very grounds where we used to screen international, not even international, but award-winning documentary films. And this was in a bid to grow audiences, but also to inspire our filmmakers to make quality award-winning films as well. So we started in this grounds, and then as audiences built, we moved to and had a partnership with Power 254, where we'd have monthly documentary screenings. The audiences continued growing gradually, and of course with these we'd have Q&As, we'd have panel discussions. And then thereafter, in 2018, we had a partnership with Alliance Francaise, where we would still do documentary screenings every month. And with that, it ran for about 2 years. That was just before COVID. So aside from the documentary screenings, we were also going to community screenings where we'd screen different films in different parts of the region, mainly because these films that would be screened would be touching on very crucial and important issues. However, the audiences did not have access to these films. So we'd take our blow-up screen, so we'd have like a mobile cinema, go to trade centers, go to different cinema halls, not cinema halls, but community and social halls, where we'd take the films based on the different crucial and important issues like climate change, the right for girls to also get education as well. We did a very intense, campaign on girls getting back to school with He Named Me Malala. How many people are familiar with He Named Me Malala? Okay, wonderful. Where we reached about 16,000 girls in different schools. So that's how we've been growing audiences gradually. But aside from the community and the documentary world, we started screening or offering a platform for short fiction filmmakers as well. We had the most fun event to come out of East Africa. Who knows what I'm talking about?
Shots and shots.
Oh, yeah. So the shots and shots, for those who are not familiar, is we curate African short films from Africa and diaspora. We come dressed in our shorts, and we toast the filmmakers with
shots.
Oh, yeah. So with this, we've been growing audiences gradually. We started in 2018, and we've been running for the past 7 years. And aside from having it primarily in Nairobi, we've also had the chance of collaborating with different festivals. We've had different editions in different regions, including South Africa. We've done Kampala. We've done, as recent as In May, we did Paris as well. So we've been gradually growing the audiences. But I think also for us, it's very important to not only grow audiences here, but also to get in touch with the Africa diaspora.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, I was really very interested in the comment that Phil made on the last panel that the cinema audiences, people are not used to going to cinema, but if you have a special event, then people will come to special events. And certainly it's not unique to Africa. I think that here in Australia as well, we're finding that we have to take our films to the audiences like you've been doing and build those audiences. So very interesting. And certainly there is an audience for documentary, there's no doubt. There's an audience for films.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And they love it when they can find them,
Yes. I think for us, it's more of how do we get these audiences to connect with the films that are being made? We are a documentary film fund, and once these films are done, where do they go? But aside from them going to festivals, doing the circuit, aside from them doing special screenings, how do we get these films to the communities? And this is how we've been able to achieve over the years.
It's brilliant. Sam, I'm coming to you. You're a producer. You have a production company. You also distribute your own films, and you distribute other people's films. Why did you make the decision to become a distributor and to also distribute other people's films, and how have you gone about that?
Thank you for that. And yeah, the conversations are super inspiring. Thanks, Judy. Thanks, DocuBox. Like, it's great to connect and engage in this space. So to understand our journey to distribution, we kind of found ourselves or see ourselves as a kind of community-driven production company. And we started with making work. However, we couldn't retain value for that work. And one thing was we had to pivot to see, like, how can we make the stories that we want to tell, but keep that as much value of those stories here. And what that kind of led us to be like, okay, we can be this IP business and grow that IP business. And that's what LBX Africa was, an IP business that essentially is also a space of an apprenticeship type of community, both for producers and editors now. So that because we always were like, we need more stories, we need more producers, but these producers never have space to work, because they have to dance this dance of like, I need to do all this NGO work, I need to do this to pay my bills, I need to do this, but they never have time to produce. So that was one thing we started doing, and at the same time give space for editors as well, because editing is an apprenticeship and people need time to do it. So that's what LBX Africa became. But always, like we've been talking, you make these films, you do all this work, where does it go? And if you can't retain value of that work, you're kind of stuck in this loop going over and over and over again. So how can we retain this work? And that's what we created a company called Big Emotions. And Big Emotions is an impact and distribution company. And the idea of that company is building on the networks that already exist. Essentially, Philip was here talking about his network. So how can his network connect to another network in another place so that his community we build our own community and take advantage of it? If we were talking about cinemas and people are not going to cinemas, but there is no way you can have an African film coming into this continent and it'll be shown in most of the cinemas in the continent. However, Hollywood films do that all the time. So how can we connect all these theaters and talk to the theaters and all these people in these theaters and be like, what do you need? What do you want? What are you looking for? And in a way, loop back to the IP and talk to the filmmakers and tell them, hey, this is what this side is looking for. This is what they're trying to do. And not only do that in Kenya, but do that continentally. And that's on that kind of commercial space type of things, but then there's the impact side, where there's the education, like with Cindy. So we're working with Cindy with the films we're doing, and with the screenings that Wambo is talking about, because all these are networks. But how do we take advantage of all these networks, but at the end of the day, bring back value to the people who are making the work and doing the work and doing that consistently?
Yeah, I really understand this notion of, like, you can support filmmakers to make their films. At Documentary Australia, I always say we help films be made and be seen. We've done quite well in helping films be made, but there's a lot more work we need to do to help films be seen. Like, that's where the real struggle is, because the relationship between the filmmaker and their audience is often mediated, right, by the exhibitors and the distributors. And so how to kind of get out of the way so that audiences can find these films. So I guess my question is about audiences and what you understand about your audiences. And we had a very interesting chat just before about there are different audiences. There are international audiences, there are African audiences, and how when you're making the film, you don't want to compromise the story for the audience that you're trying to reach. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I think our belief is that conversation has to start at the beginning of the story, where the storyteller has agency to tell that story. And the challenge in this space is a lot of storytellers have had to mediate the agency so that they could get support or find ways to tell the story. And in that level, there's a lot that's in play. There's a cost here. Because one of the biggest things that you're giving away is the ability of your audience to understand what you're making. And that's the biggest cost. And what that has done consequentially, we have all these films being made, but they can't translate. And whenever we try to be like, can these films move this way, you're always stuck. Primarily because from the genesis, in a way, you are doomed to fail. So how do we mitigate that? How do we re-engineer that? So it starts with the IP. It starts with the storytelling. It starts with giving a seat at the table with a storyteller. Then on the next level, another space we work in is gear, for example. You have a lot of people who are buying gear, but a lot of that gear lays dormant. And you have all these storytellers who can't afford to get this gear, or they have very little money to get this gear, but these people are not connected. So can we build a network where you have gear owners and these other guys who are trying to make this film? That means we're democratizing equipment. It makes it so you who wants to shoot with a high-end camera can literally be able to get it for half the price that's being spent right now. So there you see the agency and the making of the content now works. But now by the time you get to the screening, that's the conversation you're having with your audience, because now you're listening to them. And a very good example, interesting enough, is there's a film we premiered at CPH called Matabeleland. And we had, I would say, lukewarm, fairly decent premiere, and we've really struggled when it comes to the festivals outside. But in making the film, our primary audience was a Southern African audience. So our key space to take this film was in Southern Africa. And we premiered at Encounters, and we had 2 screenings originally, but they got sold out, and we needed to have 2 more screenings after that because of very sheer response. We were in the director is here, shout out Nyasha. We were having, our press became so dramatic that right now the subjects of the film are under surveillance by the government. And literally because they have not watched the film. Because the film is not political, the film is not feisty or anything, but the film is about a love story and a man who's traumatized and how the trauma has caused a lot of pain in his family, that he's really been struggling to move on because his father died in a genocide. And it's a man who's 60 years old, who's vulnerable enough to confidently tell you he doesn't remember the number of how many kids he has. But he has a picture of every single one of them. And that's something very personal to a lot of African people, their relationships with their parents, especially their fathers. And that's why that film hits this side, but doesn't translate on this side. And the fight in making this film was allowing ourselves to make it, because every single person wanted us to make it political. And in that way, the audience receives. So if the cycle works that way, all these networks with Philip, with everyone who's doing in this space, in impact, we are all going to build an audience that will bring value back to the people who are making the work.
Yeah, and it speaks a lot to many conversations I've been having in the last couple of days about IP, the ownership of the IP remaining here in Africa, if the funding comes from overseas, how that compromises the storytelling, who's telling whose stories to which audiences, etc. There's a tension there. And I think it speaks to the previous panel on the future of storytelling, is how to navigate those tensions and stay true to your audience here, which is a huge audience, massive audience. Yeah. So moving to the cinema space, Naomi, I'd love you to tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Unseen Nairobi, and it's an ambitious space you've stepped into to create a cinema. We were also talking last night about the importance of owner-operating and entrepreneurship in this space. Tell us a little bit about what you've built with Unseen Nairobi.
Thank you. So I suppose Unseen came about from Nairobi had such a thriving cultural scene, but we felt there was a small piece missing in the puzzle, which was a space where you could have an experience when watching a film with other people. A space that was fun, a space that felt a little bit like home, and we began, I think, in 2018 with pop-ups, and they were definitely more of an experience. We had our first pop-up on the rooftop of the Sarakasi Dome, which was amazing, looking at the Nairobi skyline, and then we moved on to the Railway Museum, and then we realized, okay, there's a need, there's a want for this experience. And so we decided to set up something permanent, and that's how Unseen came about. And since then, it's kind of exploded. We didn't really think there would be such a need for it, but yeah, we've been proven wrong, which is good. And then, of course, as soon as we started screening Kenyan films, like Softy, for example, there were queues. And we realized, okay, this is important. This is what people want. This is what people need. And it wasn't really about necessarily coming into the cinema space, but similar to this feeling I've had over the last 2 days here. It's this feeling of, I don't know, it's the space, it's meeting like-minded people, and it's become more than just the cinema space. It's become a place to hang out, it's become a place to talk about film. So yeah, we feel that the theatre space is a little bit old-fashioned, and people definitely want more than just coming to see a film and leaving, which is why we have the roof terrace, we have the restaurant, we have the bar, and we try to put on as many events as possible. Yeah, that's what we're doing and still doing, and always working with other people in the industry, with Lightbox, with DocuBox, soon with youth, indeed. Yeah.
So I assume there was a kind of development period, a bit of a research and development period before you got started. How did you identify that need?
It was the pop-ups, honestly. We did the pop-ups and we just started to see what would happen, and they sold out every time. We had waiting lists. People wanted, there was a need. We didn't really do much research apart from that. We just thought, let's just start, see what happens. There was no investment, there was no funding. It was like, okay, how do we make money from this? We have a bar, we run the bar ourselves. Believe it or not, there's money in selling alcohol. Who knew? Who knew? I don't know how other cinemas survive without tamarind margaritas, honestly. But yeah, they were so successful, and it told us that people would come. So we started.
So what's your kind of marketing strategy? How do you get the audiences into the cinema? Is it the bar or is it the films?
It's both. And it's collaborations, honestly. There is so much strength in collaborating with other people. We really try to do more of an experience when we put on a film, especially like a Kenyan film. So it's trying to work as closely as possible with the people producing those films, so that they can understand our audience and we can understand what they're looking for in an audience. It's weird being on a panel. I'm usually the one organising or curating the panels, but yeah, definitely things like Q&As, and also we've been doing other things, not recently, but like live scores with electronic music. People want to see those sorts of artistic collaborations as well. So yeah, we're always trying new ideas, and they're always a success. It's not just about coming to watch films and watching people talk about films, but also what the experience is. The last conversation was really interesting, thinking about the audio, because when you drop the audio and just have electronic music, people want that. They want to see that.
Yeah, that was very interesting, the idea of having audio podcasts, but people together in the room. Yeah. So moving on to you, Cindy, you're doing also something very entrepreneurial, and that's taking films into the classroom and working with a lot of schools. Tell us a little bit about your platform and, I mean, how it came about and what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I worked as an international sales agent for a couple of years. And what that meant was representing African films in the international market, going around the festival circuit, knocking on VOD platforms and trying to get them to be bought. And that came with a lot of sitting in spaces where there's strategy being discussed of, how do you sell this film? And priority never came for the African market. Priority always came for other markets because it was easier to sell there. There was money there. And there was a little bit of undertones of dismissal for the market because then they're like, there isn't enough income that is coming from the continent. And I think that left me with a lot of questions of, you go to a market and there's always these conversations of, oh, Africans don't watch African films. Oh, they're not paying for the films. And then begged to dig deeper and be like, what are we not doing? Or, what can we do to build an audience? And I think that was met by a bit of thinking around meeting the young people where they are. And also just to ask, a lot of us grew up watching a lot of Hollywood films. Just on TV, the content that we grew up with, ideally is what when we grow up and have the buying power, is what we want to go to the cinema and watch, just because we were familiarized with certain kind of content. And then the question of, yes, if we want to reach the young people, where are they? They spend a lot of time in schools and in classrooms. And that begged the question of trying to figure out how are we going to get these films be a key resource that can be used in the classrooms. And that's how Tunga began. So what we do is we license African films, focusing on African films. We work with a team of teachers who watch these films and identify different sections of these films that they can align to their curriculum. And that means that they pick excerpts of the film, because the classroom setting is 40 minutes. They pick excerpts of the film, the teachers, and then they write a lesson plan, which acts as a guide to let other teachers know that this is how you can incorporate this section of the film to a very specific topic in the subject that you're teaching. And that has worked, I have to say, because I think also it was met by a shift in the curriculum, the CBE curriculum, which requires a lot of the teachers to use audiovisual material in the classroom. and there being not enough of that, or find the teachers having a very difficult time in finding relevant material that they can use. When they go to YouTube, they find a lot of material that is not actually reflective of the realities and identities of what they're teaching in the classroom. So I think the timing also was right with that, because the reception that we got from the schools and from the teachers was amazing, in that they have African stories that they're incorporating in their classrooms. And this is just not only in the obvious subjects like English and Swahili, it's also in sciences like biology and physics. We haven't cracked mathematics and chemistry yet, but who knows, we might. But it cuts across all the subjects, and in a way, having the students watch, and I'll share a snippet of one of the teachers from Highway Secondary School who has been using, she teaches history, and she's been using a lot of the material from the different films that we have, and she says when she started using the film clips, the students, of course, want to watch the full film, which now they have to swap lessons and make them double lessons, because double lessons don't exist anymore, but they have to swap the 40 minutes to have an 80-minute session, and they can show a full feature film. But also it's in the engagements the students have in the classroom, because then you see that students who never used to participate a lot in class now are responding because they have something that they can contribute to, and they have something that, it opens up those conversations in the classrooms, which is fantastic to watch. And I think now, coming from the classroom aspect of it, there's the out of the classroom bit, in which we are getting invited to many schools because they want the in-person experience again, where, of course, now we do educational impact screenings, of course, in collaboration with other organizations like DocuBox, and in these spaces where you go and sit in a space where you have about 2,500 students that get to watch the film and interact with and engage in the conversations that are there, but also, again, when you're leaving that space, they're like, where can we find more? And we tell them then there's a platform that they can use every day in their classroom and outside their classroom. And when they go for their club sessions, entertainment for those, a lot of schools in Kenya are boarding schools, and there's that section of entertainment that is there, and them not having to go to look for other different films, but they have a place where they can go to, find a film, and just use it within the school setting.
Oh no, congratulations. I mean, it's so important for African children to grow up seeing their own experience reflected on the screen and not just be consumers of kind of Hollywood or YouTube, rest of the world content. So yeah, congratulations. And does it also translate into students wanting to make films?
Yes, actually. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. There's how many know the Kenya National Drama Film Festival? Yeah, those who went through the Kenyan cinema. So we have a national competition that involves theater, and now they've been doing film for 10 years, for the last 10 years, where schools and students make their own films. And in this year's national competition, in a collaboration with DocuBox, the Climate Story Labs, and Kenya Grapes, we put a call for students to make climate films. We're not creating the system, but within the national competition, in collaboration with the Ministry of Education. And in the national level, out of 246 films submitted national-wide, we had 45 films that were made by students that touched on a climate aspect. And out of those 3 films, out of those 45 films, we awarded 3 films that won the climate category. And I think, watching those films and the kind of stories that these kids are telling has been like a very emotional process for me, because you see the talent, you see the energy, you see the level of storytelling that they come with at this competition, not only just the climate films, but at the national competition level, which was brilliant. And in an extension to that is also trying to get them to figure out how do you, yes, you've made these films, how do you get them seen? And how do you organize for yourself as students to champion for the stories that you've created? How do you start building audiences for your own film? And I have to say the national competition in itself is attended by around 26,000 students from across the country, and we managed to host a film hub, a space exactly like this one, where we had over 6,000, one boy, if I'm right, over 6,000 students come to see it and watch films and talk about films and have an immersive experience of interacting with cameras. We had Kenya Grip, who brought in a whole set of gear for students to interact with, and just other different formats of storytelling. And the interest is there, the desire is there, and you can actually see it from the kind of work that they produce. And also just to note, filmmaking now is a career pathway that students are starting to learn from grade 9. So I think, yeah, as we continue, even as filmmakers, and that is just to know that the talent now is being nurtured all the way from grade 9, moving ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It offers a career pathway, and there are role models of filmmakers who, I suppose, also go into the schools and speak about their films, but also an engagement with social issues.
Yes.
So the social return on that kind of investment in education is quite powerful. Yeah, congratulations. It's amazing. In Australia, it's very difficult to navigate the school system. The Department of Education in Australia, there's a different one in every state. You have to navigate the department. Teachers are very time poor. There are a lot of barriers to getting films into schools in Australia. Is that the same here?
It's the same. I mean, we had to go through a lot of vetting. It's been 2 years before we got the authorization to actually be in schools, because now the Ministry of Education is the one that it regulates any access to schools, public schools. And they had to take us through a lot of vetting sessions. So what kinds of films are you talking about? Are you going to bring things? There's a way they phrase it. Are you bringing this? Yeah. So we had to go through a process of vetting, which took us about 2 years before they came to realize that anyway, this is exactly what we are doing. These are the types of film that we are taking into school. We are not corrupting any minds. We are not. Yeah. So and they finally saw the value in it, and they gave us the authorization to be in school. So we are fully authorized by the Ministry of Education to be in institutions.
You must have a lot of filmmakers beating their way to your door to get their films onto your slate and get teachers to write education material. Is that right, Sam?
Definitely. I think most, if not all, our films are licensed to them. So we just need to be consistent and keep. I think that's kind of the trick with building audiences. Is the same. It's like we just need to be consistent in what we're making and keep feeding. Yeah.
That's terrific. And so at DocuBox, you're also working closely with Cindy on the education program?
Yes. We've been working closely with Tunga Media Africa to reach these audiences in schools. But I think something else that I wanted to just mention is we've talked about cinema, we've talked about schools, we've talked about community, but we haven't talked about broadcast, which is like a big elephant in the room. How do we get these films seen wider? Because there's so many people who own televisions and don't get access to these films. So there's a project that we did in partnership with, there's a project that we did on sexual reproductive health, rights and justice that Cindy was leading called Get Real. And these are very heavy thematic areas that we talk about. There were short films from East Africa where in this kind of model, this strategy that we had for impact, we not only focused on community screenings, school screenings, but we also focused on getting the right partnership to get more people to watch the films. So we partnered with MediaMax, K24 for the Kenyans in the room. And through this, we were able to collaboratively bring audiences together live to watch the films and have curated panels that would talk about the various issues like abortion, early pregnancies, etc. Hi, Elsie. Elsie was the impact producer for that. And because this MediaMax had the broadcast, of course, the TV, they also had digital platforms where people could tune in and watch the films. We were able to reach massive audiences that we haven't reached in just one impact
Can you say the
campaign.
number?
Yeah.
3 million.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in a span of 4 episodes. Yeah, and maybe what you even mentioned, that it was a live broadcast. So we have a gathering like this, they watch the film, but it's being broadcast live. So we're taking that experience that is happening in physical impact style kind of conversations, but then transmitted on broadcast. But also to mention the leveraging of the other channels that MediaMax had, because K24 was our main channel, but when we went to Nyeri, they incorporated Kameme, I want to say Kameme TV. There was access to radio where you have hosts talking about the films, talking about the issues. Then you go to digital, you go to print, and having that collaboration with a media house that opened up access to audience that we would have never imagined to reach was quite fantastic. And also just to add, in the educational aspect of it, we also do licensed non-exclusive broadcast rights, because we are looking into working with broadcasters that have educational channels or programs where we want them to start screening films. And one of the examples in Kenya is the Edu TV that is there, and trying to see how are they also able to program these films and reach out to an audience that we might not have direct access to, but with a broadcast then gets to a wider audience. But I can see someone to that.
Hi. Yeah. I was gonna say there's something to how in the making of the content we have to be open to adapt it to the audience, the spaces, like in terms of just also formatting and dabbing and like allowing this format to the content to be a lot more accessible through all these networks. And that's something I think we also are very keen on. And I love all the other experiences we're talking about earlier.
It's interesting to bring up broadcast, because I almost forgot to ask about it, because broadcasters in Australia have become so difficult to deal with. They're almost irrelevant. I mean, they're not really irrelevant, they have a lot of money, but we're trying to find alternative distribution pathways to the audience because the broadcasters are so risk averse. So it's interesting to hear that you've got this successful broadcast relationship. Do they also form part of the finance plan?
Unfortunately, not yet. But I think from the engagement we've had with MediaMax, it left them with some questions and left them with some things to discuss in them. Yeah.
Sorry, and just to add, I think they also came in with additional value. Aside from the initial approach was broadcast, and then they said we have a digital platform, so you can use that as well, and then we can also organize the community screenings and do the mobilization and have this broadcasted live. So these additional values that they came in with really, I think, pushed the program even forward.
Oh, well, congratulations. It's very uplifting to hear all of this. I've been given the wind up. I'm sure there are questions in the room because, it is the important question. How do we get our films to audiences? Are there any questions in the room?
Hi everybody, my name is Shiba from the Nairobi Film Festival. The question I wondered about the cinema, is about cinema, and whether you think quotas would work. They use that in other places, demanding that there be a local, like what they've done with broadcast, but also using that same model in cinemas and demanding of cinemas that they screen a certain quota of local films in order to qualify for their license or so. Don't give me a dirty look now. She's doing, you're excluded, you're already way ahead. Yes. I mean the other cinemas, the commercial mainstream cinemas. Should we be demanding that they follow a broadcast programming methodology that has a minimum quota of Kenyan and African films?
I don't understand why they're not doing that, honestly. Yeah, but they think there's no money, but there is money.
So we're in a catch-22. You're like, businesses want to thrive, they want to survive, they want to keep going. And in their balance sheet, if you're looking at it, they're like, the only films that bring money
to us are your blockbusters and these other things. So they're genuinely freaked out and scared because the few experiments they've done have turned out terribly. But partly, mostly to their fault as well, because there's a misreading of what's supposed to happen. And when you have that disconnect, even if you present a quota, there's a possibility you might be killing a business. And because you have to invest on both sides. Like you can't be like, force this side to do something and you're pouring nothing on this other side. There needs to be, like with the schools, with all this, with the education, there needs to be investment in this ecosystem so that everybody gets value out of it. So if you go hard on one side, there's definitely gonna be payback on another side. And that's the thing. So the conversation would be more complicated than just quotas. I would say quotas would work if there's equal, if not more investment in the development, the education, and all this other stuff.
I can see Naomi is
One more
itching
thing
to say
though.
something.
Okay, yes, blockbusters, you're thinking of the Marvel and everything, and yeah, they make money, but do you know how Unseen Nairobi made enough money this year to expand? Was Battlefly Keepia. That is how we expanded. That is not a Marvel movie. That is a Kenyan movie, and that is why Unseen Nairobi are now screening, 4 different films a month instead of 2, because we took that risk. Also, they don't have the patience. They don't have patience. Or like, word of mouth is everything here. So with Battlefly Keepia, it started. Let me not use that as an excuse. As an example. Sorry, I'm trying to think of another example. Okay, maybe Sketchy Africans, which we screened last month, the month before. That had actually already been seen by a lot of people, but there was a huge amount of people who hadn't seen that film. So at the beginning, it was only the people who had maybe already heard about it that were maybe telling people. But after, at the end of the month, so many other people had heard of that film and they were coming to watch it. So it was often slow at the beginning, and then people start coming. You just need some patience. Also, doing the blockbuster film, the Battlefly Keepia, is my example of a block. Yeah, where's Tony? And then screening one that maybe isn't as well known or hasn't had as much marketing simultaneously. There are tricks. They're just not taking a risk.
And thank you for the question, because of course festivals are the place to kick off, and to develop audiences and begin that word of mouth and that critical success of a film that then flows on into all the other places that one can catch up on a film. I mean, yes, there's a few hands going up.
My question, appreciated everything. This is a great chance for us Ethiopian to be here and to entertain with all this. Now my question goes to my sister with a white dress, white hair, playing with the angels in the education. Now, how are you handling with the government, the rules and regulations?
Yeah, so yeah, we have The Kenya Film Classification Board here. So each and every film that we license that goes to school has to go through them, and they give us a rating. And in that rating, we're able to know, is this film suitable for high school? Is it suitable for tertiary? Is it suitable for lower primary? That's from the film side. So from the film, we have to take our films through a rating system. But from the educational side, we have to work with the Ministry of Education. And the Ministry of Education is what I was saying, that we had to go through a vetting process for them to, one, acknowledge the rating from KFCB, government to government, say you don't have to do double vetting for these films because KFCB has done the vetting, and for them to accept that as a valid vetting process for the films, and then also for them to understand the process in which we use the film. So the vetting comes into the collaboration with the government bodies comes in two prongs, from the film side of things and from the Ministry of Education. And we are beginning the process of looking at other African countries as well, and trying to look at what the regulations are in those countries as we plan to roll out to other African countries. So we do, of course, have to work with the guidelines and regulations of those countries, just because also dealing with young kids and all that, you have to follow some certain kind of regulations to be in those spaces.
Yeah, there's the man in blue.
Hi, my name is Mark. I wanted to find out, I think one of the challenges in distribution from a filmmaker perspective is when it comes to earning the split. And I think it's a big challenge. I always, when I talk to my friend filmmakers, it's like, okay, go to the cinema, but it's 50-50. Oh, wait, what? And we know at least for foreign films, there's, after the 4 week, the change, how do we, especially for people in distribution, how do we change that so that knowing what filmmakers are going through trying to make the film and the business is there, but also understanding that they do need that leverage at the beginning to try and make a margin. That if we start at a 50-50, I've already lost such a markup that I'm struggling already, even though you as a distributor, you're making money through the film and you're making money through what you're selling or everything else. But as a filmmaker, you are already on a back foot when it comes to it.
Do you want to take that one, Sam?
Hey. So there's several realities of when you decide to make a film. There's the idea. I think she was asking about, can the broadcaster give you a finance? Can they aid the finance plan? I would say there's a gap when we make a lot of the films, especially when we're making them out here, is in a sense we're making these films blind. We're making these films with hope, which is like, I am making this film because I had X made 2 million, or I am making this film because I had Y, because we do not have the information, we do not have the data. Now, when Naomi speaks here and says, Battle for Laikipia does X, and that's why we have an agreement like distributing all our films through her, like her cinema, what we are getting in return is data that, in a sense, loops back to feed the information I put in my finance plan when I make this film. So I know if I distribute my films purely through Naomi's channel, I'll get back $10,000, for example, right? I can confidently put in my finance plan that I can get $10,000 from distributing it through Naomi. Most of us do not have that data. So that's why we always feel we realize when we get to that other side that things are lopsided, because we came in blind. And by working together and engaging in a community, that's the power of these conversations. That's the power of us. We need to find ways in which we are connected and have data that we utilize as African filmmakers that feeds back into the value that we want to retain, build, have, because this gig needs to be sustainable. We need to sustain what we are doing, because we have so much, I would say, storytelling catch up to do, because so much has been taken away from us. And for us to to loop that thing back is we need information back. And right now, we have very little of it. And if we congregate and find a way to get that back, that lopsidedness won't exist.
Yes, we have time for one more question. So here down the front.
I actually don't have a question. I have a compliment for Naomi. Every time somebody has missed a movie in the theater, I ask them, have you checked Unseen schedule? So you are actually sort of like a second screen before something disappears. When people wanted to see Battle for Laikipia, it had a smaller window, but then you kept showing it. So I just want to first give a compliment to her. And then as filmmakers, yeah, you really do curate a beautiful space. But I used to work in creative marketing for a studio, so I want to share, studios book out spaces 5 to 7 years in theaters. So when you're looking at Cinemax, you're looking at all of those slots are gone. Anything from May to I believe late August, summer films, everything, those are gone. So if you're trying to get those slots, they will always prioritize the international films. February and October are the best years for theatrical cinemas. But as filmmakers, one of the things I would ask, especially if you have a couple of shorts, ask what the theater is asking for the ad space, and do a couple of shorts before a feature film. You know, when we needed to qualify some films, like for the Academy Awards, you have to qualify a short film. When we asked the theater, they said, oh, it's $3,000 for the block. We found 7 filmmakers, and we divided that $3,000. All they wanted was the money for the block. They didn't care how we used the block. So also start finding out the costing for the blocks, finding out, you know, as you said, you get data right back, and that's real time. You can put in your finance packet. But I just really want to point out Naomi's space is you're really the second space where if something's not seen and somebody says, I want a life, and people follow your Instagram page. I've had friends who've been around and they're like, oh, I just missed this. I'm like, check Unseen. And they're like, oh, it's showing. Let me take my mom right now. There was somebody who brought his mom from Rongai. He literally drove from Lavington, picked his mom and came back. So that's the kind of impact you're doing.
Well, to use the term that Cara used this morning, radical collaboration. We need to work together. Yes, so did I. We need to work together in partnership, share knowledge, share information, experience, and that's what this is about. So thank you all for being here and being a part of this conversation. And thank our panelists. Thank you so much.
Because let's appreciate them. Thank you. The second panel, this beautiful conversation that we've had. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Naomi. I love sessions like this because we get to have very authentic conversations in trying to figure out a couple of things. One, how are funders evolving their strategies to support independent African storytelling? Second, what trust-based, long-term or equity-driven funding can look like in practice? And finally, how African-led funds and global institutions can work together to build sustainable models. This session will be moderated by Rennie Matsiko. Rennie, I invite you to come up on stage. Let's appreciate her. So Rennie is a project and administrative manager at Documentary Africa with extensive experience in finance, administration, and corporate communication across East Africa's arts, banking, and non-profit sectors. One more time, round of applause for moderator.
Hi, everyone. I know this is the last panel. We might drag it, but if can have you for just 45 minutes, and then we wrap up, it would be wonderful. Feel free to take your seats if you need to sit, but we'll still have the conversation, okay? So my name is Rennie, and I will be moderating this conversation. But I'm also very privileged to be joined by 3 incredible people. They don't just fund films, but they also influence what stories are told by who and for whom. So please join me and welcome John Sestry from Ford Foundation. John is the program officer at Ford Foundation Just Films Initiative. He supports global documentary, new media, and visual storytelling. A multidisciplinary artist and curator, he previously served as executive director for Flathead Film Seminary and has helped to launch the film program at the Smithsonian National Museum for African American History and Culture. Welcome, John. Also welcome with me, Toby Brooks, who leads the Sundance Ignite program at Sundance Institute.
where he supports emerging filmmakers whose work has gone on to win top prizes at Cannes, Sundance, and the Oscars. Since joining Sundance in 2012, he has worked across talent development, festival programming, championing the next generation of cinematic voices. Welcome, Toby. And our third panelist is Susan Bogo. Susan is the program's partnerships and fundraising director at DocuBox, where she's charged with ensuring that DocuBox is creating authentic body for work that provides personalized glimpses into the world, issues, and lives that would ordinarily remain undocumented. Guys, welcome with me an incredible panel today. I like the conversation about the future of documentary and film funding, because I know each one of you sits at the intersection of film and funding. But I want us to first start with a bit of heart before we get into systems and structures. So for each one of you, at what point in time, was it a story, was it a moment or a filmmaker, where you say, yes, this is where I have to be, this is why I'm in this space? Susan, let me start with you.
The moment in time that I felt like I'm in the right place. I want to say when we did Kenya Creates, and it's and it's because I think I was 24, around 20 when I was 24. I had a conversation. We were having a conversation with someone on what impact would you want to leave in the world, and so I remember saying I would want to change something around the sexual reproductive health rights and justice space, just to make, and it was specific to choice. And also just like reproductive education. And so getting to do Get Real and then getting to do Kenya Creates, and Kenya Creates was really targeted towards adolescents. And listening to the conversations when the kids watch the films or when the parents watch the films, was like, we are doing something, I'm doing something, like I'm part of an engine that's changing something, so yeah.
Toby?
There we go. I grew up in a family of artists. My father's a musician and my mother is a music teacher, and she ran a children's theater. So like, I don't really, it wasn't really consensual for me to be in the arts. It was just like, I was kind of like, I don't know a world other than that. And so working in the arts was kind of just an inevitability for me. But I think like, and obviously I have like early influences of films that I saw or theater that I saw that was like, oh my God, I really want to do this, and this is like what's really important to me, or this is like kind of how I want to engage with the world. But I think for me, there was, if I think of like I'm in the right place, it was my very first year at Sundance was in the 2013 film festival, and Ryan Coogler was premiering his film Fruitvale Station at the festival that year, and it was the premiere of that film, and seeing this like very, very young filmmaker who was just kind of like, even at that moment you knew he was at the precipice of being of just being, you know, an impactful artist in the world, and getting to see the kind of how much work he went through all these different programs at Sundance and played the festival at Sundance, and just kind of the mechanisms that kind of exist in the world to help push these artists forward and help kind of try and remove a lot of the friction and obstacles that these artists have to being able to tell their stories and being able to tell their films. Show their films. That was a moment for me where I was like, oh, this has tangible impact in the world. And the film itself was, about a moment in the history of where I'm from, where I grew up. And that was, we knew a lot about, but I don't know if the rest of the world knew about. And it was like, oh, there's this connection between telling stories and also in impacting the world, and that these artists need support to be able to do that. And that was kind of a moment for me where I was like, okay, I think this is the right path.
And John?
Yeah, I came up through production, working production through the camera unit, cinematographer, and I was on that path. My good friend actually continued on that path. He's
Spike's affordable DP when he can't afford Maddie LeBoutique, or the poor man's Bradford Young, I like to call him. But shout out to Daniel Patterson. He shot all of She's Gotta Have It and a bunch of other TV, like the Stars series and stuff. But anyway, we were at like a director's brunch at some festival, and the playwright, theater director Lisa Tommy was speaking, and she was talking about making room for others, and that struck a chord with me. And when I was finishing my MFA, I had the option to go a very corporate entertainment route, or to go and work at the Smithsonian or go teach at a university. And I had a mentor professor who begged me to do anything but go back to advertising. And so I took his advice, and that path sort of set me on this journey. And in doing so, it allowed me to make room and space for others, and that has added value to my journey.
I think that's incredible, to make room or space for other people, right? So I would again still pick up with you, John, now with that. I know at Ford Foundation right now, you're not just funding films, but you are rethinking the entire ecosystem that filmmakers exist in, especially at times like now. Could you want to share a bit of that learning journey, and what are some of the parameters that you're trying to stretch, such that you're more inclusive, but also, yeah.
Yeah, so our portfolio is half direct production support and half what we call social justice, independent film ecosystem support. And we do it through 3 buckets of work: content, new economic models, which is our newest bucket of work, and then the infrastructure, which we call innovation. And so that can look like many, many things. And there's a lot of guidelines because a lot of activities are not charitable. And as I talk to our lawyers and compliance team, art itself is not a charitable activity, you know? And so people are like, fund this, fund that. And I was like, well, you know, it's not quite that simple. And so it's about finding the charitable act within the work. It's finding the public good within the work that people are doing, and finding those guidelines to sort of help support our work, which we know has public benefit, but it's not always that cut and dry. So like Kara said, you know, we are doing the work of advocating within these institutions that don't necessarily see the value and benefit of art and culture the way we know it works. And so that's sort of what we're doing and how we're doing it. But we see this larger ecosystem being rooted in many truths. You know, I won't say there's a single truth, because Muhammad got me on that, or got all Americans together on that at a conference recently. He was like, what is this American notion of a singular truth? He was like, that's so Western of you all, you know? He's like, Rumi said, truth came down and was broken and spread for everyone. And the whole room went, ah. And so, you know, we all had to change our you know, stump speech. So the many truths that exist is what we're trying to honor. And so that can exist in many forms. It doesn't have to necessarily be documentary. And I don't think documentary is a static form, but I do recognize that it has many purposes. But I lean into the artistic value of it, the creative storytelling, nonfiction storytelling.
Just as a follow-up, I know there are things that can't be shared, but for those that can be shared, is there an economic model that you feel could actually work for documentary in Africa, John?
Is there an economic model?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think whatever that model is, it would be the same model that would work for independent filmmakers everywhere. Because I think, you know, independent filmmaking has always been scrappy, you know, and I come from a experimental filmmaking background in which, you know, we make for non-commercial purposes. And so I can make a film for nothing. I've made films for nothing, you know, and that's a possibility. Is it sustainable? Is more sustainable than making films for $2 million?
Okay. We'll come back to it. I think that I could say. Toby, at Sundance, I know Sundance has been a launchpad for global voices, and the Ignite program has been a bigger part of it. What are the fund's current priorities right now, and how are you also ensuring that African storytellers are part of that pipeline, not just as guests, but as creators with power and longevity?
Yeah, I think, you know, the Documentary Fund in particular, to answer your question, they're focused on, you know, as they're evaluating the funds that they have to give, so much of it is about feasibility and, you know, the whether or not the films can feasibly be made and the impact that the films can have. I also think one thing that hasn't necessarily been talked about as much, but yesterday when we were talking about kind of the history of DocuBox and kind of what Sundance does in particular, where this intersects is this idea of like quality, and how the most feasible and impactful way that films can get to audiences and get to market and all these things is through quality, and like that's kind of the first and foremost thing that I think Sundance looks for in its artists. I mean, where we really thrive at Sundance is our curation and our selection process, and I think that we have the luxury of being an institution that a lot of people come to, so we have the luxury of having the best artists come to us, which is, you know, really a privilege, and ensuring that we're putting money into projects that we think have the potential to have, you know, a lot of impact into the storytelling that they want to do and into the markets that they want to go to. But that really begins with, you know, identifying artists that are going to be able to effectively communicate their ideas and their through their artwork to audiences, and kind of that pathway. I think in terms of African film, I mean, the fund is really focused on also empowering filmmakers kind of through their own kind of you know, the ownership of their own film and their IP, and you know, like helping a lot of our filmmakers that we give money to navigate co-productions and things like this to be able to have as much autonomy in and, you know, remuneration and all these things with the partners that they work with. And I think a huge part of that is knowing the partners to work with, like DocuBox, and partnering with different organizations, and not assuming that we can come in and dictate how different you know, filmmakers from across the world are supposed to navigate their spaces, but partnering with organizations that have the expertise and have the relationships locally, and know what, you know, like in the US, we're not presuming to know what African stories need to be told or should be told. It's about partnering with organizations that can help us understand, you know, where the impact is best suited, if that makes sense.
Okay. Susan, yesterday we had a very beautiful day, learning more about DocuBox and the work that you've done on ground, which I must say is really incredible, and well done to everyone at DocuBox. I want to ask, as a funder in East Africa, but also beyond, what is a model that you feel is actually working right now, and what do you wish that international funders could learn, or at least could learn about the African creative landscape?
As a funder, what model do I think is working right now? A collaborative model where filmmakers are getting together, because the funds are less, but then you get together to actually work on projects together. So I'm going to give an example of this collaborative model. Judy's part of a consortium as a filmmaker with Eugene, with a few filmmakers who've gotten together, and because they all want to tell their stories and they all want to build their audiences. So you don't have to be working as in a silo. So each gets to do a film, and you all get to take the film round, and that way you're getting to build an audience that knows after every film is produced, we will have like 6 films in 1 year, and we know we're gonna watch them, and we're gonna take them around the country. So a collaborative model definitely would work. What do I wish international partners knew? More unrestricted funding for the people doing the work, and not necessarily just like programmatic funding, because then that's a bit restricting, because then that means I have to do a film on gender or on climate or on, but if funders get together, if the partners get together and give like unrestricted funding, and then we're able to expand the slate of stories that we're able to tell, and films that we're able to support, and not just in certain specific areas.
Yeah, we have piloted funding filmmakers just, like you said, unrestricted, unattached to a project, because that is what's necessary, because filmmakers are often working on multiple projects at a time. Sometimes they're like Sam Soko, you're producing, you're editing, you're directing, you're mentoring, you're researching, it's like you should be supported as the whole person, and sometimes siloing is what complicates things, So, and I also think what complicates things and why East Africa is thriving is because of DocuBox and its existence, and why some other regions are a little behind in the creative nonfiction storytelling is because outside interests have colonized the documentary market, like Al Jazeera, right? And so everyone is contorting themselves to tell stories in their model, right? And so now when you introduce a fund for creative nonfiction, they're still trying to do the Al Jazeera model. And so there's a mismatch there.
And I think it's about trusting the artists. Like, we're administrators, John's an artist. I am not an artist. I'm an administrator. I wouldn't purport to be able to know what should and shouldn't be said. And I think that, this young man asked a question about kind of being spoon-fed particular stories that are, desirable to the mass market. And I think that, like, trusting yourself as an artist, that, like, if you have something that you're interested to tell a story about, then there's going to be, none of us is unique in the sense of, like, there's no one story that only one person is interested in. And so reorienting kind of what your priorities are, whether it's going to be mass market or whether you're just like really passionate about a particular story, and trusting yourself as an artist is kind of how I think to lead the process of making art. And our job as administrators is to trust the artists themselves, and to do our work to remove as much interference that the artists have to their own creative process, and allow them that. And I agree with the unrestricted part of it. It's like there's an imposition to thematic restrictions, or even like particular ways that you're allowed to spend the money. The more that we're, us as funders are able to remove ourselves from the process, the better the filmmakers have to make distinct films.
Which I totally agree with you, because if we then give a funding that is not restricted, then we'll stop hearing the statement from filmmakers where they say, I don't just need a grant, I need someone in my corner, because then you're moving away from just funding projects, but funding the creative and what they are capable of doing, because creatives are capable of so much more. So if we don't limit them, then we open up the world for them to actually create how they should be creating. Which then I will ask, what are some of the things that you wish also as creatives understood about your selection process, and maybe some of the myths that you can now dispel now that we're here, of what they think about Ford Foundation, what they think about Sundance, and what they think about DocuBox?
Yeah, I think a lot of prospective grantees, and even myself when I was seeking grants, I think we get in our own way, and what I've learned from my colleague Chiwe, mainly was, sometimes the investment isn't even in the project, it's in the person, it's in the artist, right? And so you're so fixated on, is the grant proposal right? Is my project perfect? And it's like, none of that matters half the time, and grant writing is not, it's not essay writing, so it's never going to be perfect. You can't gamify it. Everyone's trying to figure out, how do I get this right? It's never right. So let it be messy, let it be imperfect, but move forward, move through it. And so many people stop. I've been to pitch forums and have invited people to apply, and I'm like, have the open call, and I'm going through looking for their submission and it's not there. And I'm like, I see them, I'm like, hey, what happened? And they're like, oh, I wasn't ready yet. I'll submit next time. And I was like, well, what's going to be the difference? You know? So yeah, I think a lot of people get in their own way. And so it's like, just put one foot in front of the other and start the journey. And if it doesn't happen, it's such a subjective thing, just like film festivals. If you don't get into a festival, it's not because your work isn't good. You know, it's so subjective, and you can't look at that as a failure. You have to like keep moving, and you have to find a path for your own film, because every film has its own journey, and everything has a contradiction. You know, I've seen films that have premiered elsewhere and then premiered at Berlin or Sundance. You know, so there's always an exception to the rule.
And Toby?
Yeah, I mean, I've learned so much in the 10 years that I've been in charge of a curation process, and also when I was working for the festival, I was observing the creation process, the curation process quite a lot, and that was educational to me. And there are two things that I think I've learned most, is that one, when I'm looking for artists, specifically for the Sundance Ignite program, which is for 18 to 25-year-old filmmakers, and you know, it's an artist development program. It's about, again, you're looking for the person, and it's me, the thing that comes through most, or what I respond to most, is an artist's own relationship to themselves and their own relationship to their own work, because I can't support an artist, and like the resources that we have won't be effective if the artist isn't necessarily understanding what their intentions are. And so the applications that come through strongest are the ones, I mean, it's an obvious one to, like, you know, ask you to be distinct and be, you know, diverse in your voice and be, you know, like really specific in your voice. But those are genuinely the things that jump out for me as like, okay, this is somebody who not only has a real understanding of the type of work that they want to do and the perspective that they have on their work, but they're also willing, because of the intimacy that they have with their artistic process, they're able to kind of dismantle it and unpack it and explore it without kind of collapsing the whole infrastructure. And that allows them to grow, you know, on a foundation and a kind of scaffolding that they have in place. And that's really kind of what I respond to. And then I also have, you know, from one thing I've learned is that, like, the really, really cool thing about an application cycle is the cycle really dictates to you itself what is kind of necessary to support. And for the Ignite program, because we're working with young filmmakers and youth a lot, I begin to see patterns in the types of stories that filmmakers are telling and the types of themes that filmmakers are talking about. And so I let the submissions themselves kind of dictate to me what needs to be supported for these filmmakers, because it's, again, about removing as much of your own perspective and imposition on what these filmmakers are making that will allow kind of the distinctness and the specificity of a particular generation of filmmakers to be able to tell their stories as they want to. And so that is the real pleasure to me, is like being much more reactive to what the submission pool says to you, rather than kind of like I'm searching for these particular things within the submission pool.
I mean, I agree with what they both say, because it's the same process at DocuBox. It's all about the artist and the filmmaker, but also about their relation to the story, like how, because it's your story, you want to tell it. We're not going to tell you how to tell it. So your commitment to tell your own story, and also DocuBox is really committed into authentic stories, authentic African stories, because we support African filmmakers. So sometimes, I mean, there are times people will do an application, but then you'll put a white person in there thinking it's going to give you a chance. I'm sorry. Chances are you might not get it. But then it's the authenticity of why you want to tell the story and why it's very important to you. And that's in both, like, the general calls and the programmatic calls. Even if the call is around climate change, and there's this whole NGOification of documentaries, we don't go for that. We want authentic stories that people can actually relate to, and not feel like they're being preached to a message.
Guys, now we know what everyone is looking at in their selection process. I want to open it up now to the audience because I know we have filmmakers. Maybe you have your questions, you have your frustrations, but you also have things that you want to ask. Now it could be the time that you ask these questions. So we'll take about 3 questions and then we'll have our panelists respond.
One question that I have, I guess trying to be specific, maybe John on the Ford side. I don't know if Toby, you can be able to answer it, but I guess as African filmmakers, and if you've had enough interaction with like applications that come from the continent, very specific, because I felt like the answer was very general. What do you think have been the things that we are probably doing that we could shift or alter? And so that it's not just a general, okay, everyone who applies, but what, because you're already trying to catch up, what can we do better?
I can be specific, and I will say that for our open call, we work with a panel now of international colleagues because we have blind spots and where we take submissions internationally. So I work with someone who has expertise in the African region, who can lift up proposals. That's why in our last round we got 2 films from the Congo before Madoma even mentioned that the Congo is popping. I already knew. So, but yeah, I'd say one, the Al Jazeera thing, you know, like this TV style documentary thing that's a little dated, or the NGO-fication of storytelling, like that's very apparent, or where there's a lead producer from Europe or sometimes America on the project that might be leading the creative in a strange way. Or like my friend Millie Sutando said, Millie's like, at least for South African filmmakers, she's like, there just needs to be a ground level proposal writing course, you know, because it's like getting to that stage isn't even viable, you know. And so I think that there's a number of challenges, and like I said, East Africa is the strongest of all the African regions in terms of submissions. But I mean, it varies project to project, you know, and I think there's a dearth of producers in every region, you know, and I think what's missing are not just creative producers, but financial producers that can present accurate budgets, you know, realistic budgets for some of the productions and timelines for those productions. That's some of the things that I've been seeing, you know, and you know, but then there's some that are just great, you know, and so it varies, you know, yeah.
Thanks for this brilliant talk. My name's Josh. I'm with DocuBox. Thanks, John, for illuminating on your views on proposals. Now, we've had a few calls where something disturbing has started happening. It was alluded to by Brian Afande when he congratulated the artists for doing a manifesto that wasn't based on ChatGPT. But we've started finding that there's a lot of applications that are using ChatGPT, you know, as you know, trying to improve the proposals or the applications that they're making to funders. What's your view on that, given that you've said yourself that you don't really care about the quality of applications as such?
Yeah, you can't cheat the system, so it's like, it's not worth it, you know, because we can all tell, you know, at least don't delete the icons.
Or the prompt. I literally will get applications with the, like, this year I got an application that was like, here's a version of the essay that is blah, 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 blah. And they just like copy and pasted it into the application and hadn't deleted it. So proofread your ChatGPT, first and foremost. I think it's obviously incredibly new. So all of us, I think, are navigating how that shows up in our applications. I think two really critical things. One, I think it's okay to use it in certain situations. I think disclosure is really important. If you're using it for translation or if you're using it for particular reasons to assist you with writing, that's understandable and that's fine. Disclosing that is really helpful because it's about that specificity and authenticity that all of us are talking about. It becomes increasingly difficult to identify that specific situation, what authenticity and specificity is. I also think John just said something really important, which is you can't cheat the system. And so it is one thing to utilize these assistive technologies to help you receive the funding, but you still have to be able to execute on what you've committed to doing with the films. And that at the moment is not being done by ChatGPT or whatnot. And so there is an expectation from our end that when funding is given or programs are given and access is given, that you're delivering upon kind of what you're saying you're going to do there. We have so many applications come in and we have very few resources to give. And so knowing that, like, and I don't mean to put it in the context like this, but like you receiving funds means that another filmmaker isn't. And so if you're receiving them being dishonest in what you're going to do with them and the stories you're going to tell, it takes the opportunity from other filmmakers who also have really urgent and eager stories to tell. And I think that I would so much rather see an application that is messy or miswritten or misspelled that gives me an understanding of who you are and what your relationship to your art is and what your relationship to your stories are than any sort of polished grammatical errors. I can't spell for the life of me. And so I'm incredibly forgiving to spelling and punctuation and all these things that just like don't ultimately signify your strength as an artist. And I would much, much rather do that. But we were also talking today about how a lot of us are moving towards more, like calls with folks and interviews with folks and stuff like that. And I think that will become more and more important for us to be able to learn who filmmakers are as kind of these technologies begin to flatten out the applications and their quality.
I agree with what John and Toby have said. You can cheat the system. And we've also received applications where you could even tell the version of the ChatGPT and you're just like, guys, there's a bit, the tools are meant to help us, but there's a bit of laziness that's coming with it. There's no harm in using the applications, right? But then at least make your story, like make your voice heard, like edit it to have your voice represented in that. And the one thing at DocuBox we've been doing is, all our grant calls, we always do a short list and then we interview the filmmakers. And from that, you get to know who's, who actually is, who was behind the whole application, who was why do you want to tell it? And that has helped us a lot in just sieving through the authentic stories that we want to support.
And all the funders talk to each other. So it's like the labs and stuff, like when I was an emerging filmmaker, like it stressed me out, like Sundance stressed me out. Like you had to have someone on your team who previously, was a Sundance grant recipient to apply to a grant, like things like that, it's really complicated, but you begin to understand why, that's like part of the pre-vetting process. So like participating in labs and stuff like that is par for the course, but also par for the course means that someone has an understanding of like your work ethic and how you show up in space, and so because everyone talks to each other, like that's one thing that you can't escape, and so you can't even put that on an application. So that's also a bit of insider information, I guess.
I want to challenge. I like the question you asked. Actually, it's a very good one. And I think in some way you answered it and then you took it away. I'll explain why. You said in some cases it makes sense, especially if it's a translation issue. maybe my first language is Kiswahili or my mother tongue. So I would probably write my proposal in my language, that I understand. And then I'll use technology to kind of, present my case, so to speak. So I think it's a catch-22, and this is why I said you gave an answer. You said if it's full disclosure. Maybe it's something for grants to consider, where someone can disclose. It doesn't mean you are disqualified. There could be certain challenges that lead to why you chose to use technology. Personally, I'm very old school. I'm not pro-technology to some extent. I'm still fighting it. But because you said that maybe it's not the first language or any other challenge that may align with that, I think you need to consider the idea of disclosure, and then the interview can come after that, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that as we're navigating it, disclosure is kind of the thing that is most what we can request most from folks. And I agree that, there are so many accessibility things that these technologies can open up, and we should be embracing those things. And it's just about for us understanding how people are using it, I think, is important.
Yeah. And just to build on that, I'm Tihangu from Youth Turbo. We've had this conversation before. I think it also has to do a lot with the confidence of emerging filmmakers. Sometimes they might feel like, approaching something like the Ford Foundation or Sundance is not something that they are particularly confident in being able to do. So maybe it's also posing the question of your organizations, how are you making your platforms accessible or encouraging for emerging filmmakers to even engage with? Because I was telling you, I didn't know about the Ignite program, and I wish that I did. But had I known it earlier in my career, I might not have even thought of applying, because the intimidation of approaching something like Sundance or DocuBox or Ford Foundation.
Yeah, I mean, we got to decolonize all of this. Like, we got to decolonize the money part of this. Like the filmmaking part is what matters. Like the resources are necessary, but like everything else, detach whatever importance you've attached to it. That's a projection. It's an absolute projection. These awards are projections. These festivals are projections. These institutions are projections. Your work is what matters. Your work will outlive many of these institutions. Period.
And also, it's so much of it is our job, the institution's job, to do the legwork of making ourselves accessible to people. I think that's part of it. Is like that's one of the reasons we're all here is to expand our work. And it's like and being in person allows people to see that, like, my shoes are dirty or my whatever, and it's like it heavily personalizes and deplatforms or de-hierarchies kind of like what these institutions are.
So I just want to point out something interesting I read online the other day. When considering East African applications, ChatGPT actually used Kenyans to train. So the way they speak, their dialogues are actually being flagged as ChatGPT. And it's part of everyday speak. I found that article very interesting. So just also, when you see a Kenyan, they say, bear in mind. And if ChatGPT responds like that, because they used a lot of Kenyan youth when training the language, the programming language. And the other thing is also, one of the important things with funding is to bring in an element of speaking to the people applying. I found that's made a difference, because there was a fund I participated in, and when they opened it to question, nobody spoke. Everybody was very timid, and I think when people start familiarizing, with your faces, you see your face, and they're like, oh, I can go up to you and ask a question. Western filmmakers are they don't care. They'll put their hand up, they'll jump forward. But East Africans were a bit more demure. So putting faces, having the interview process will really up the fact that, somebody may not write the best essay, but when they articulate their vision and they're able to speak through what they want to do, that will make a difference in how the applications come in. But yes, ChatGPT was trained by a lot of Kenyans, so that is also going to be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest and very frank. I mean, it's really just a capacity issue for many of us. I mean, this year through our open call, we received over 5,000 submissions. We supported around 40 projects, and that was us stretching it beyond what any of our grants managers and leadership would prefer. You know, they're like, you're making too small and too many grants. Why can't you make bigger and fewer grants? And I was like, because there's so much demand. There's so many good films. They're like, this is a lot of work for our staff, you know. And I was like, but you don't understand. You know, the need is there. You know, and so we couldn't do 5,000 interviews. You know.
I want to push back a little bit against a word that's been used throughout these 2 days, and I would like to unpack it, if you could unpack it a bit, which is authentic. And I'm Colombian. I come from Colombia, and that the way that word is used sometimes in the Latin American context, and particularly in the Colombian context, is to frame certain types of stories or content as more Colombian than others, right? And everywhere from the publishing market to the film market to any other forms of art, the type of art, Colombian art that makes it, that's published, that's translated, that is bought by Netflix or seen or awarded at Sundance or Berlin or all these other places, are stories that retell a Colombian story over and over again. And very often when you talk to artists, whether they be filmmakers or writers or whatever, they talk about not being able to publish or get their work seen if it's not about certain topics. And this happens like even when Colombians are selecting stories for awards or for, you know, the ministerial culture, like all these things. And there's a very famous anecdote of Latin American authors starting like wanting to publish a book of short stories with one of the bigger presses that is US based. It was in Spanish, but they were rejected because their stories were not Latin American enough, right? And they're all Latin American writers writing about whatever they want to write. So I just wonder first if this is something that resonates also in this context, and if so, when we say authentic, what are we actually expecting to see or hear, and what would be an inauthentic story from an African filmmaker wanting to make a film? What would be unauthentic about that?
I think I can give it a go. We read the docubooks, the African Manifesto as the first thing. And for the longest time, some of the stories that are coming out of the continent are all about struggle or about war or one thing or the other. But that beats the purpose, because if you look at Kenya, we have 42 tribes. We have different social classes. But John just said there's no one single story, one single truth. There's also no one single story that should come from the continent. So when we say authentic, we mean stories that we resonate with. Not just about struggles, but also about wins, and also about just day-to-day life. There's an interview that, sorry, I'm going to reference to you again, Judy. When you did the film Dangerous Affair, and you were talking about how when you were interviewed in ZIF, and the journalist was like, but that's not a Nairobi story, because that's not the stories that go out, but yet it was. And so the risk of trying to tell one story or one side of the story without allowing for both. So when we say authentic, we mean we resonate with the stories and they're actually happening on the ground. And yeah.
Right, like How to Build a Library. As an authentic story, is How to Build a Library is an authentic Kenyan story, Africans.
Let me allow Mary to say something.
We're living in a time where the same word can be co-opted by so many different uses. And it's just the time we're living in, right? And it's like fact and fiction have actually done this, right? So I think it's about emotional truths more, honest work. And it's not to say you should take authentic out of your manifesto. We need to all use it in the way and understand that there are multiple doors. What's fading is this rigidity of a single mediated reality. that's what's gone away, right? And so I think this, but it's because authenticity gets used as policing all the time. You know what I mean? Me and my husband always have this. He's Ethiopian, I'm Ethiopian American. That's a whole other conversation around the diaspora and the homeland. But seriously, this conversation, especially with the homeland and diaspora, is also fraught. But I think thinking about clarity, emotional truth, multiple truths, you know, what feels real, you know what feels real. That's why when you see it, audiences go to it. I think that's the compass and language we need to all be kind of referencing, is like, does it feel honest? And the problem is when it's like Narcos 1,000 times over or whatever else, when it comes to, it doesn't feel honest to us, you know?
Hi again. Actually, they both have led into my question. How much do you factor in what is an African story and an African filmmaker? Because I think those are two different paths. So say if 40 years ago somebody from Nairobi pitched you Star Wars, how would that affect the application? Because I think there are two conversations with what is an African story and who is an African filmmaker, because that's different. How much is that factored in applications?
I'm speaking as myself, like not as an institution. I want to support African filmmakers, you know, so that's primary for me. But that's why we have two buckets of funding. So we give funding directly to organizations, African organizations, to fund African filmmakers and African stories. So it's not going through a mediated Western lens or panel, you know, and not just one organization, several, you know, and so that's one way of making sure that it's connecting.
Yeah, I mean, it's hugely central to part of the selection process for Sundance. Is the authorship of the stories that are being told is massively part of it. Who's telling the story? What's their relationship to the story? What's their personal, financial, whatever their these things. It's a massive part of the rubric. Both also African filmmakers on the continent and in diaspora as well. I think those are stories that we're really focusing on who the filmmaker is telling the story behind it.
I think this conversation can go on and on. But I can also say that for Ford, at least at DOCA, we've received funding that we can support African stories. So yes, I can attest to what John is saying. I want to just be biased and allow just one person to ask the question, and then we could wrap up. Peter, please allow me. I saw you around. Maya, I will let you ask your question, because your hand has been up a couple of times.
Speaking to a lot of filmmakers on the continent where we're applying for these things and we're not getting them, but then also they're not necessarily receiving kind of just some feedback as to what happened. And of course you get how many? 500, 5,000? 5,000 applications. So that's really difficult. But I also feel like for us also to progress in terms of both what it is that, I mean, because yes, we are genuine in the story that we're telling, but I also feel like there's lots of things that we can still learn from you guys, as you guys can learn from us. But I wondered whether there was a way that there could just be more reciprocity in terms of if we were applying to a fund and we didn't get it, and I don't know what the answer is, if there would be a way to just get some sort of feedback for us to then know how we then kind of also go to the next funder.
Sometimes there's nothing wrong with the project. And I don't want to perpetuate a scarcity mindset, but again, it goes back to the subjectivity thing I said at the beginning, both with funds and festivals and awards. You know, it's subjectivity, you know, and receiving it is not an acknowledgement of quality, and being denied is not an acknowledgement of lack of quality, you know, so that's primary. But I hear you in terms of just having opportunities for continued conversations and feedback.
I also think it's really important, I mean, like the scarcity mindset and also just like the resources. So for Ignite, we get 1,000 applications for 10 slots. And of those 10 slots, because of the resources that we have, we're budgeted for basically, we're a US-based organization. And so the majority of the filmmakers that we support are US based, and that's primarily a result of budget in terms of travel and logistics. And so we have more or less the budget for 3 international flights, and we're trying to encompass and support filmmakers like globally. And so it just becomes a numbers game, which is really frustrating and challenging, but also like part of the demystification, and I just want to be specific here, is like, you know, in terms of like, I would love more than anything to be able to give people feedback. I think that the calculus for me is it beneficial to them for me to give them the feedback on their work? So is it more painful or less painful to hear your film was fantastic, we just didn't have space? Like, is that productive? I don't know. Or even it is productive, yeah, and that's great to know. Yeah, to apply for something else. But also if I don't have a relationship with you built on trust, where you trust my taste at all, or have any trust in like my authority or my gatekeeping whatsoever, which you shouldn't have any trust, but like, how then can I give you constructive feedback if we don't have a relationship of dialogue that I'm able to share frankly things that can be improved, and also that you're able to receive those things where it's not just like, who's this random person who doesn't know me, doesn't know my story, doesn't know my work. And so it's an incredibly difficult conversation to have if you don't have those things. And sorry, I know I'm rambling, but just one more thing. Like literally for Sundance or for Ford, we are the people who are reading and watching the submission. So in terms of capacity, like I have literally, I think 5 weeks to watch 400 short films this year. That's from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. pretty much every single day, watching nonstop short films. It is a laborious process, and it's just us. Like we just don't have the capacity, and that's a really challenging thing that I'm not entirely sure how to fix.
Yeah, and I'll say for Ford, one complication is that we're not a traditional film funder. We're a social justice film funder. And so we're trying to align with strategies of the foundation, which are constantly shifting and changing. So one year there could be a focus on disability justice, the next year it could be gender, you know, and so it's that needle is constantly moving. And then we want to find coordination with our regional offices, and so we're getting it vetted by them, and so we want to see if this is aligned with their strategy, and their strategy may be shifting. And so it's a complex thing for us, and that's different than other traditional film funders that are purely funding for film merit, and that's why it's important for us to get some of our funds out to people who are just funding for film purposes. And confidentially, I know this is being filmed, but you know, for the next 4 years, we have endowed a development award at Durban. So I encourage you all to apply to the pitch forum at Durban for the next 4 years, because there will be a monetary award there, you know, for a social justice documentary. So, you know, doing things like that are ways in which we can get more resources to filmmakers on the continent.
I mean, we don't get 5,000 or 1,000 applications, but this call we actually had the most. It can be challenging to give feedback, but as DocuBox, we're experimenting something where those who don't get selected get a week's mentorship support, just mentorship, and get feedback from the films. We are yet to start it, but we're hoping to start it in August, and we're hoping it can be something that can run with every call. We do understand the importance of feedback, but then it's also how it's received. I agree with the whole, it needs to be like a relationship and how you receive it. So that is also going to be open to like film, because if you want to be part of it, then you get that kind of feedback.
After this conversation, all the panelists are going to be out, so we could follow up and have these one-on-one conversations, because others will stay here and Peter will just keep looking at me directly. Let me just have one question to wrap up with the panelists, and I feel like this is a question that we can go and think about even as we go out. What's one collaboration that you truly believe could change the work for African storytellers and African organizations?
I think there has been a shift in very many foundations and very many foundations, especially those that work in the social justice space, moving towards narrative change work. So one collaboration I think would help is all these philanthropy organizations are working in the narrative change work. If you could collaborate together and just like pool the funds and then support organizations that are supporting filmmakers or support filmmakers directly. That will help instead of just each organization coming with, I want this project, but you're all dealing the same social justice issue area. So if there's a way you can just collaborate together and just support one instead of different pockets of programs.
I think it's what you said, unrestricted operating funds for organizations. It becomes incredibly difficult when every time you receive funds, it's tied to a program. It's more work, it's more staff, it's more resources. For funders to also who are funding nonprofits in these funds to give general operating support funds, which Ford gives to Sundance, general operating support funds. Those are unbelievably necessary for nonprofits to be able to scale and do impact that is flexible and reactive to what they're seeing.
I think that the elephant in the room, or the fourth estate, or the enemy, the tech companies, we always call them out, but we rarely call them in. And I think it's time to, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. And so in terms of collaboration, might as well pull up a chair and instead of shouting at them from a distance, shout at them up close.
It's been a wonderful discussion. Thank you to the panelists for your insightful thoughts. Thank you, DocuBox, for having us all in this space these 3 days and more. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, the audience, for your engagement and time. As we go out, let's just keep the conversation going. Approach Susan, approach John, and approach Toby to just keep talking. So thank you very much, everyone.
One more time, round of applause to this spectacular panel. And thank you, Rennie, for the beautiful, beautiful job done. We're about to come to an end of this beautiful 3-day summit.
Thank you so much. I think it's been so inspiring. So I want to just, first of all, just wrap this up by reminding us how this all started in the morning, and then I'll pass it on to Kitavi to tell you where you're going to next. So in the morning, we had the manifesto, African Manifesto, and I hope it actually touched you in a way. And Judy came and grounded it, and then we took off to the firesides, right? The first one was the future of storytelling, thank you, as it was moderated by Judy Kibinge, with Kara Matez of Iris, Phil Karanja, Philip, and Brian Afandi, Black Rhino. Some of the standing out issues, which I know must have been many, include rethinking the financial models and allowing radical collaboration, plus the need to reimagine how we tell our stories. 2, investing in more human events and experiences while integrating technologies such as VR, augmented reality, etc. 3, building and tapping into audiences that can consume the films while still investing in them, just like Philip made us feel about it. The second one, alternative distribution models, which was moderated ably by Mitzi Goldman of Doc Australia. And we had Naomi Callaghan of Unseen, Sam Soko, LBX, Cindy Makandi of Tunga, and April Gade of DocuBox. Some of the issues that, again, stood out, and there are many, the need for audience building through different levels, communities, academia, schools, and general population. 2, for data that can help filmmakers make decisions around how best they can distribute their films, adapt alternative distribution models. Some data may exist, but it has not been centralized in one accessible space. And 3, schools as an alternative avenue for both audience building and career pathway for future filmmakers. I'll go to the fourth one, which was about, the third one, which is about the future of doc film financing, which was moderated ably by Rennie Metiko of Doke, joined by John Cesare of Ford Foundation, Toby Brooks, Sundance, Susan Bogo of DocuBox. And this was on film funding, the funding of doc film financing. 1, What stood out was the need for collaboration and pooling funds and ideas together on film projects like the Kenya Creates. Then there was the need to see more creative producers as well as African producers increase chances of getting funding. And then there was that issue which was around ChatGPT. That can be helpful, yes. It's imperative, however, for African filmmakers to commit to delivering their projects as per submitted applications. Filmmakers should therefore invest in proposal writing courses, etc. Some buzzwords: authentic, honest, African, various support system offered by filmmakers, unrestricted funds, and we can all do better by continuing to collaborate. Asanteni sana. Thank you all for being here. And I'll pass this on to Peter Kitavi. And thank you to the panels. Thank you to the moderators. Thank you for a wonderful, wonderful morning, which take us into the afternoon and into lunch. Peter Kitavi.
Thank you. Let's appreciate him, please. And I think, Mijamba, there's a buzzword you've forgotten. The digital era. That was okay. Okay, so we're going to add it. Guys, we've come to the close of this beautiful day. When we began, the partner next to you, the person sitting next to you, you give them a promise. Did they honor the promise? Did they keep you accountable, active? There's no social media. You're able to pay attention. They deserve a high five. And just tell them thank you. Thank you for being amazing company. Right. We've come to the end of this beautiful 3-day summit. As soon as we're done, there is lunch ready for you to be served. And we look forward to, please exchange contacts before you go with someone who you see a potential opportunity to collaborate, to exchange ideas, to get snippets of how we can take advantage of granting, writing better granting. And I like the idea of the same word having different meanings here. So authenticate means different things. I'm curious to see what else has a different meaning, right? My name is Kitavi. I have been your host. Enjoy your afternoon and a great weekend ahead. Thank you.